Chapter 464. Number 60 High School's midterm exams this time were divided into days, which meant that students would be tested on one subject a day. As for why this was being done, Headmaster Chen naturally had his own considerations as the headmaster of Number 60 High School. On one hand, this was to reduce the pressure on students, and on the other hand, to give them enough time to study for the exams. Originally, a lot of students would be happy to hear about this kind of split-day exam system, because usually, once the midterm and final exams were split-day exams, classes would be suspended from the exam. After the exams, they could go straight home. But this time, at Teacher Pan's insistence, the suspension was lifted. It could only be said that as a pioneer teacher at Number 60 High School, Teacher Pan was in the end Teacher Pan. She was actually able to rely on her silver tongue to force the headmaster to accept her advice and change the suspension exam system. After this news spread, the students' resentment towards Teacher Pan instantly reached an unprecedented peak. The first and second periods were Dao Talisman's lessons, and the class was dead silent. After Teacher Pan finished her lecture, she had just left the classroom with a pile of papers when the class started to ring out, and the noise grew louder and louder until it completely exploded. Old Pan is crazy. Super Chen couldn't help complaining after class. She's indeed quite hateful, but it doesn't matter. In any case, she doesn't have anything to do when she gets back. Dopigwa spread his hands. Not chicken dinner? Super Chen asked. What chicken dinner? As long as I don't watch Lord Island's live stream, it's fine. Did you watch Lord Island's live stream yesterday? He chopped the power lines with a katana, and there were sparks and lightning along the way. He directly killed 20 people, and in the end, a passerby little brother won chicken dinner, Dopigwa said. Also, I heard that after the live stream, Lord Island contacted the passerby little brother and asked for his contact information, intending to play as a duo with him in the future. Super Chen couldn't help sking. This little brother is going to be popular. Dopigwa cupped his chin with an enigmatic expression on his face. And do you know, I suspect that this little brother is probably someone from our school. Not a suspicion, but a certainty. Little Peanut also came over and asked curiously, someone from our school? Why do you say that? Dopigwa. You know, Lord Island streams live on the island, but it's very unfamiliar and no one recognizes it. I have an uncle who works in the telecommunications office, and out of curiosity about Lord Island and little brother, he checked their IP addresses. Super Chen. And the result? Dopigwa. I couldn't find Lord Island's IP address. It's a very strange string of garbled code, and I don't know why this happened. As for the little brother's IP address, my uncle found out that this IP address is in our school. The IP address of that little brother Galagaki is in the school? When the other students heard this, they were shocked. Who is this little brother? Dopigwa cupped his chin. I'm not sure at the moment, but from the name and live stream information, this person is a bit gay. Also, he seems to like working out a lot. Everyone turned to look at Super Chen. Super Chen. Why are you looking at me? I'm not gay. I'm innocent. Feather Lin's Fujoshi soul began to stir restlessly again. With a sinister smile on her face, she stared at Super Chen and Dopigwa. In our class, the most gay Lagaki. In our class, the two of you are the most gay. F***K. Why don't you talk about Wang Ling? Don't look down on him just because he doesn't like to talk. People who don't like to talk are usually sultry on the inside. Wang Ling raised his head, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help twitching. Why was he being dissed all of a sudden? Super Chen. What's the saying? Since ancient times, sultry youngsters have always been sultry. If it's not Billy, it's gay. Everyone. Wang Ling. At the same time, in the office on the top floor of that high-class office building in the heart of the city, the lady of the castle was receiving a VIP, who had come to buy information. After the incident with Immortal Mansion and Taoist Taoya Shuego sect, Emo Immortal Castle had been cheated one after another. Not only did they not have any income, they were even in a state of continuous loss. Although Emo Immortal Castle wore the guise of a private education institution, it still had a huge industrial chain, both legal and illegal. But after these two incidents, Mo Immortal Castle had practically used up all of its profits for the past 5 years, and had spent a lot of money to wipe its butt clean. So in order to continue operating the business, Mo Immortal Castle had now started to enter the intelligence business. Previously, Mo Immortal Castle had cooperated with other people by sharing intelligence and exchanging it for resources. Who knew that the big shots nowadays were each worse than the last? They might as well directly sell information to make money. In the large office, the lady of the castle sat on a sofa facing a young man in a white Taoist robe, and his attendant. This young man was the client, who had come to Mo Immortal Castle to buy information this time. This young man looked very young, but his skills and cultivation were unfathomable. The lady of the castle was very close to the young man, but she realized that there was no sound of him breathing at all. He was clearly a great senior. If it wasn't for the fact that the young man was now calmly sipping his tea, the lady would have thought that he was a dead man. The young man's face was almost morbidly white. She didn't know if it was because he couldn't see the light, but his attendant had been holding a black umbrella for him the whole time. Since the Lord wasn't around, and the lady couldn't see through this person's specific realm, she was a little nervous. Senior Bai, do you think my offer is appropriate? If you think it's expensive, we can actually discuss it. 500,000 immortal gold bars for accurate information was the current market price for Mo Immortal Castle's information. For some special information, the price might even go as high as 1 million immortal gold bars, which was close to the price of a holy weapon. My master just wants you to find someone, and you actually want 500,000 immortal gold bars? The servant holding the black umbrella said gloomily. I'm very sorry, Senior Bai. This is indeed the market price. The lady blushed with shame. Actually, there have been a lot of big clients who have come to us to buy information before. Big clients. Can you give me an example? Mr. Bai's lips curled up slightly as he smiled. Like the big clients who came to us before, like Taoist Taotai. Although he broke the contract midway. Taoist Taotai? Mr. Bai's expression changed slightly. Yes. The lady nodded and answered truthfully. Apart from that, the old devil and the master of Immortal Mansion have also come to us to buy information before. Although they were both arrested. Chapter 465. Although the lady couldn't estimate this Senior Bai's specific strength, she was well aware of his identity. This person was currently a wanted criminal, President Bai of the Demon Hunters Association. But based on the various clues and confessions that the police currently had, none of the members of the Demon Hunters Association who had been arrested could say what President Bai looked like. Even senior members of the Demon Hunters Association, like Strongswa, hadn't even seen President Bai's face. The only person who knew President Bai's true appearance was probably the servant standing next to him with the black umbrella. Even if it was just a servant, the lady felt that this person's strength wasn't inferior to hers, and was a little terrifying. When the lady mentioned the old devil and the master of Immortal Mansion, this President Bai's expression changed slightly. There were actually a lot of intelligence agencies in Songhai City, and Mo Immortal Castle was one of them he had heard about. In Songhai City's intelligence network, Mo Immortal Castle's intelligence network was second to none. But seeing was believing. This abnormally pale young man indeed didn't expect Mo Immortal Castle to actually have dealings with Taoist Taotai, the master of Immortal Mansion, and even the old devil. Information could be sold for a high price, but there were times when being expensive didn't mean it was accurate. This depended on whether this intelligence agency had the relevant transaction experience. If even the old devil had bought information, President Bai instantly felt that this information might be worth the price. Old Lu arranged for the transfer. President Bai raised his hand. Servant Lu was blank. President, do you need to think it over again? No need. The abnormally pale young man waved his hand. Our Demon Hunters Association has lost 2 elders this time. I'm well aware of Elder Kanglin and Elder Han's strength. I sent them to deal with a third-class dog, but in the end, there wasn't even a corpse left. Furthermore, the reason for the turmoil in the Demon Hunters Association this time was that dog. If I don't find it and stew it, It really won't be able to dispel the hatred in my heart. All right. The old servant had no choice but to nod. For some reason, his eyelids twitched very quickly as he had a very bad feeling. Holding the black umbrella in one hand, the old servant actually extended a rattan from his lapel to take out a cell phone. He then used the rattan to directly operate on the phone. The lady was startled, because judging from the aura, this didn't seem like a wood spell. Instead, it was something that resembled a human organ. Could this person be a tree spirit? She felt that she had discovered something incredible when the old tree became a spirit and cultivated into a human form. That was because tree spirits belonged to the demon race. Although the lady of the castle had heard that some demons in human form had slipped out of the gate between worlds and mingled in the human world, this was the first time she had seen any trace of them. Most importantly, this old servant had concealed himself too well. There was not even a trace of demonic chi on him. Thinking this, the lady had some speculations about the origins of this master and servant pair. A tree spirit that could cultivate into a humanoid form had to be at least 3,000 years old. It was very likely to be an itinerant immortal, and this itinerant immortal level tree spirit was actually willing to be the servant of this sickly young man. If this abnormally pale young man wasn't the tree spirit's second uncle, then it could only prove that this young man's strength was probably above that of an itinerant immortal, and a little stronger than Taoist Tao Tai. This was a true immortal expert. All of a sudden, the lady realized that this young man might be an opportunity for Mo Immortal Castle to bounce back from its current economic depression. If she could rope in a true immortal senior like this as a backer, the lady felt that everything Mo Immortal Castle did in the future would be much more convenient. President by wait, the lady suddenly said. The abnormally pale young man looked up. I can sell this information to you at a 10% discount. What do you want from me? The abnormally pale young man asked with a deep look in his eyes. As the president of the Demon Hunters Association, he had traveled the world and seen all kinds of occasions, as well as all kinds of transactions. Naturally, he knew the rules of the trading center. There was never a free lunch. For a piece of information worth 500,000 immortal gold bars to suddenly be sold at a 10% discount, there had to be something behind it. This junior knows that the members of the Demon Hunters Association are now wanted by the police everywhere and are at the cusp of the storm. Senior, as long as you can help our Mo Immortal Castle with one thing in exchange, I'll sell this information to you at a 10% discount. Hee. Then why don't you just give it to me for free and do me a favor? The abnormally pale young man laughed. The lady, because we're really poor now. The abnormally pale young man. This simple and crude reason startled the tree spirit servant surnamed Lu behind the abnormally pale young man. How about this? What do you want? Let's hear it first, the abnormally pale young man said. It's like this, senior. The reason why our Mo Immortal Castle is in this economic depression, and we have no choice but to peddle information for a living, is all because of one person. Although this person looks like a teenager, his realm is unfathomable. We've sent people out many times to teach him, but they've all been defeated miserably. The lady recalled that miserable experience. Our Mo Immortal Castle once employed the 10 saints, but now they've become the 7 freaks of Jiangnan. The abnormally pale young man. The lady said. Also, I suspect that it's not a big deal. The arrest of that old devil and the master of Immortal Mansion are most likely related to him. I understand. The sickly young man nodded. He had already understood. You want me to take care of this person? The lady. Not bad. That's easy. The sickly pale young man coughed slightly. I'll let Elder Lu, who's behind me, take action on this matter and test the waters first. It would be best if he could get rid of it. If I can't deal with it, I'll do it myself. What do you think? Hearing this, the lady was overjoyed. If that's the case, that's great. However, that person seems a little strange. I personally think that Senior Lu might not be able to deal with him. The sickly young man chuckled. I think you should have already seen it. Elder Lu isn't an ordinary person. Even if he can't deal with that young man, he won't die. I only sent him to test the waters. This elder Lu was obviously extremely confident in this. You can rest assured. I specialize in the wood system's spell of creation and rebirth, and I have an extremely strong self-healing ability. Even if I take a blow from a true immortal, as long as a trace of ash remains, I can reconstruct my body. This junior worries too much. The lady nodded and cupped her fists at this elder Lu. May I know elder Lu's honorable name? You're too polite, lady. Just call me elder Lu. My name is Sun. Chapter 466. For some reason, the lady felt that this name sounded a little familiar. After several encounters with that youngster, she was almost certain that this expert who looked like a youngster was definitely at true immortal level. Of the 10 saints whom Immortal Castle had hired previously, apart from Third Saint who had defected and left, Great Saint and Second Saint had been killed by the other party's aura backlash. To be able to kill a peak soul formation expert with a backlash, there was absolutely no need to doubt this kind of strength. But at that time, the lady's judgment had been that Wang Ling might be an itinerant immortal. After that, the incidents with the old devil and the master of Immortal Mansion had happened one after another, which gave the lady a new estimate of Wang Ling's strength. It was very clear that this was a genuine true immortal expert, and it would be very difficult for the lord of the castle to deal with him personally. To fight a true immortal, the only way was for another true immortal expert to lend a hand. At the very least, they would be evenly matched on paper, unlike the 10 saints whom they had hired previously, who had died before they could even make a move. True immortals fighting true immortals should be evenly matched in any case. They couldn't just be killed with one slap, right? The lady pondered this in her heart. She knew that the two people in front of her weren't simple, and this was a great opportunity to make friends with experts. But she didn't dare to agree immediately, because she felt that something wasn't right. She didn't know why, but she had a bad premonition. President Bai couldn't help smiling. If you're really worried, you can send that person's location to Old Lu right now, and I'll send him to take a look right away. Old Lu loosened his grip, but the black umbrella in his hand didn't fall. Instead, it floated in the air to cover President Bai on the sofa. It turned out that you didn't need to use your hands to hold up the umbrella. Seeing the lady's hesitation, Old Lu felt uncomfortable that his strength was being questioned. So he decided to demonstrate his spell of creation and rebirth to the lady now. Looking around the lady's office, he finally saw a spirit sword hanging on the wall. This wasn't just a decoration, but a holy weapon. Old Lu could recognize it at a glance. Is this sword yours, lady? Elder Lu stared at the spirit saber and stood in the same spot without moving. Another rattan extended from his lapel and took the spirit saber from afar. The lady was startled. This saber was the Wind Regret saber from the Lord's collection. Its grade was not high, only at the 8th level. However, this saber had a destructive effect, commonly known as tetanus. Once one was cut by it, the wound could hardly heal in a short period of time. The reason why it was specially bought by the castle lord as a collector's item was not only because of the special effect it contained. Most importantly, this saber was a pair of twin sabers. One was named Windwish, while the other was named Cloud Movement. These two blades were both of the wind attribute, but one was yin and the other was yang. If these two sabers could be found, the two sabers could be combined into one saber. It was rumored that it could unleash the power of a quasi-world-defying magical artifact. When the castle lord collected this saber, he thought that he could find the second saber one day. Unfortunately, the second cloud blade had already been destroyed, leaving only the broken hilt in a museum. Thus, this Windwish saber's value in the castle lord's eyes had instantly dropped a lot. But that was several hundred years ago. Now, this Windwish saber had been shelved by the lord and kept with the lady. This is the Windwish saber. Has Mr. Lu heard of it? This is our castle lord's collection. The lady replied. No wonder I thought it sounded familiar, as if I'd seen it somewhere before. Mr. Lu couldn't help raising his eyebrows, and then he couldn't help smiling. You said before that your Immortal Castle's economy is in a great slump. Since that's the case, why don't you sell this saber? Although the other Cloud Movement saber is already broken, This spirit saber's destructive effect is still worth a lot of money. The castle lord said that no matter how poor we are, we can't casually sell his collection. This windwish saber has been around for a long time, and can be considered an antique. It's good to keep its value, the lady replied. Mr. Lu muttered to himself for a moment, but didn't continue to ask. In any case, he just wanted to show off a few of his skills. After some thought, he handed the windwish saber to the lady, then pointed at his own head. Lady, please try slashing my head with this saber. The lady was stunned. This was a little too bold. An itinerant immortal, without the protection of any magical barrier, could only be completely immune to magic treasures below the level of a holy artifact. Even if this Wind of Regret saber was an 8th grade holy artifact, it was looking down on the damage of an 8th grade holy artifact. The most important thing was that this saber's destructive effect was real. Back then, the Lord had courted death himself to test it out by slashing the back of his hand. Without the aid of any medicine, even with the Lord's realm, it might take as long as 7 days for the wound to scab over completely. It's fine, lady, please go ahead and don't hold back. However, Mr. Lu was clearly extremely confident in his self-healing ability. This destructive effect might be useful for other people, but it's almost negligible for me. That's because my self-healing ability is far superior to this saber's destructive ability. Of course, if it was the destructive power of a world-defying magic weapon, I might be able to put it to good use. But in today's world, world-defying magic weapons are almost negligible. When Mr. Lu said this, President Bai also nodded and smiled. Old Lu is right. Furthermore, even if there are world-defying magic weapons, they have long been secretly protected by the state. If a country can control 1 or 2 world-defying magic weapons, they are already a strong deterrent. But these magic weapons are usually very powerful, and unless there's a war between nations, they won't be used lightly. The conversation between the two of them was straightforward, but it wasn't too vague. Of course, it wasn't just the lady who was concerned about national matters, but also Imo Immortal Castle. Currently, Imo Immortal Castle's intelligence service was limited to a few big cities in Huaxiao Nation, and it hadn't fully spread out yet. It hadn't even made a name for itself domestically, so it was clearly still a long way to go before it could expand internationally. Mr. Lu, you're going too far. The lady cupped her fists in salute as she gripped the Wind of Regret's saber in her hand. Since Mr. Lu is so confident in himself, I'll give it a try. As soon as he said that, President Bai snapped his fingers, and the lady saw the black umbrella floating above his head abruptly expand to form an airtight barrier. This barrier is independent. It won't damage the lady's office. The sickly pale young man smiled slightly, then raised his hand. Lady, please chop with all your strength. The lady. All right, but is it really okay to use all my strength, Mr. Lu? It's fine, I'm headstrong. Chapter 467. This black umbrella had an unusual origin, as it could actually form a barrier on its own. This was the lady's first time seeing a magic artifact with this attribute. Usually multiple people had to work together to set up a barrier array. For example, during the Shuego sect incident, when Xiao Yunqing of the Xiao clan had gone berserk, many police forces had joined forces and mobilized tens of thousands of police officers to set up a barrier in the area where Xiao Yunqing had been. Of course, there were some almighties who could set up a barrier on their own, but it usually took some time to form hand seals and chant. But this small black umbrella in President Bai's hand could actually set up a barrier in an instant. This made the lady sweat a little. She could more or less guess that this black umbrella was an extremely powerful spatial magic artifact. No wonder the police hadn't been able to find this President Bai all this time. This small black umbrella in his hand was really a powerful escape weapon. Holding the Wind of Regret's sword in her hand, the lady stood inside the barrier, which was very large, like a small world of its own. This was a dark space with a chaotic aura lingering around it, which showed that the origin of this small umbrella wasn't simple. Mr. Lu, then I won't stand on ceremony. The lady greeted him, then straightaway picked up the Wind of Regret's sword and started to gather spirit energy. She wasn't the Wind of Regret's sword's owner, but she was directly authorized by the lord of the castle through the power of the contract, so she could control it. The moment her spirit energy poured into the Wind of Regret's sword, the sword light instantly surged, and the power of a whirlwind swirled around the blade, causing a violent gale to blow in this windless space. On the side, President Bai watched this scene peacefully, feeling a little regretful in his heart. The Wind of Regret's sword and the Cloud Movement sword were a pair of famous twin swords on the list of spirit swords, and each sword alone could rank in the top 30. If the two swords were successfully combined, the new Wind of Regrets and Cloud Movement would directly rank in the top 3 on the list of spirit swords. Unfortunately, the Cloud Movement sword was already so broken that only the hilt was left. Relevant experts had already appraised it, and it was impossible for it to be repaired. "I'm going." After gathering strength, the lady made her move and slashed the sword in front of her. The powerful sword light was accompanied by a violent gale that tore through the air in the shape of a crescent moon as it slashed forward, exploding with enormous energy. Mr. Liu, on the other hand, did not move at all. He faced the gale calmly. Just as Mr. Liu had said, he did not cast any spell to protect himself. His entire body was in a relaxed state, intending to receive the impact head-on with his physical body. Wherever the saber light passed, Mr. Liu's head was split open. Green blood flowed down the crack. At the same time, the Wind of Regret saber's tetanus effect was activated. Tiny whirlwinds invisible to the naked eye could be seen on the wound, which continued to damage the wound. This scene was truly frightening to the point of making one panic. After this blow, the lady put away her knife and couldn't help shuddering. It hurt just by looking at it. However, Mr. Liu did not make a single sound. About 2 seconds after the knife wound was formed, a green light surged out from the wound. The lady was astonished to find that the special effect of tetanus had disappeared, as if it had been purified by this green spirit light. At the same time, Mr. Liu's wound was rapidly healing at a speed visible to the naked eye, and it was now completely intact. "This is my spell of creation and rebirth." After the demonstration, Mr. Liu chuckled. He had absolute confidence in his spell of creation and rebirth. "I believe that the lady should be able to see through my true identity. But if you think that I'm just an ordinary tree demon, then you're gravely mistaken." The lady cupped her fists in a salute. "Please advise me, Mr. Liu. I am indeed a tree demon, but there are many types of tree demons. Although some tree demons specialize in offensive wood magic, the vast majority of tree demons specialize in binding and binding techniques, which can have a controlling effect in battle. My clan is even rarer, as we are born with extremely strong self-healing abilities and all kinds of healing with spells." Mr. Liu chuckled. "Our clan also has a resounding nickname, Forest Fairies." The lady had an enlightened expression on her face. Although she didn't know much about it, she had indeed been intimidated and felt that there was something unusual about this Mr. Liu. President Bai withdrew the black umbrella's barrier, and the small umbrella floated above his head again. "How about it, lady? Can we continue our discussion?" The lady nodded, her face full of smiles. "Of course." Mr. Liu glanced at his phone and said, "I've already ordered someone to transfer 50,000 immortal gold bars to the account you've provided, lady. Please check it. Then, according to our agreement, I will first go meet the person you mentioned on President Bai's behalf. But before that, I would like to ask you to share with us the information we need." At this point, both sides had shown their sincerity to each other, and the lady was naturally very generous. With a wave of her hand, a jade scroll appeared in her hand. This was the information that Imo Immortal Castle had investigated. She presented the jade scroll with both hands, and Mr. Liu directly stretched out a vine to grab it. He then said teasingly, "Everyone says that Imo Immortal Castle's information is 100% accurate. I wonder if it's true or not." The lady gave a very fake commercial smile. "If it wasn't for the fact that the information is 100% accurate, how could President Bai and Mr. Liu have found us?" Mr. Liu was just joking, lady. No need to take it to heart. President Bai waved his hand. "Several elders of the Demon Hunters Association have been secretly looking for that green-furred dog for a long time, but haven't been able to find it. Your information has been a great help. As for the person you mentioned, I will definitely get rid of him. Abijah never boast. I just hope that after this cooperation, the Demon Hunters Association and Mo Immortal Castle will have a deeper cooperation. The lady understood a little. As a veteran who had come into contact with all kinds of bigwigs, she already had a lot of experience. President Bai's words instantly enlightened her. She knew that the Demon Hunters Association wanted to rely on its formidable strength as a foundation in exchange for information resources with Mo Immortal Castle. To put it bluntly, Mo Immortal Castle was acting as a hired thug. This was a moment of life and death for Mo Immortal Castle. Of course, the lady was very happy at these words, and she immediately nodded repeatedly. Of course, I hope Mo Immortal Castle and the Demon Hunters Association can work well together. That's good. President Bai nodded, and then motioned for Mr. Liu next to him to open the information scroll. Come on, take a look at the information. Let's see where on earth that green-furred dog is. As Mr. Liu looked at the scroll, the lady of the castle explained, based on the coordinates at which Elder Kanglin and Elder Han disappeared, which President Bai provided earlier, our Mo Immortal Castle finally used some methods to detect the residue of the two men at the construction site, and concluded that the green-furred dog had probably used something very similar to corpse powder. Corpse powder that can dissolve a soul formation cultivator? Mr. Liu was a little surprised. The lady nodded. When we first found out, we also found it hard to believe. There's actually corpse powder in this world that can instantly dissolve a soul formation cultivator. But it was the unique smell left behind by this corpse powder that ultimately led us to the green-furred dog's trail. Listening to the lady's explanation, President Bai and Mr. Liu continued to read the information on the scroll. At the end of the information was a map. It was marked with the location of Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's family villa. Meanwhile, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Little Silver were eating stir-fried broccoli in the villa. At the dining table, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal stared at a pot of broccoli, his eyes shining. Little Silver picked up a broccoli and looked at it. He had heard Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal say that this broccoli was a hint from old Senior Wang to comprehend heavenly Tao. However, he had already been eating it for almost a week, and hadn't discovered anything profound about it. Little Silver was a little doubtful. Is it really useful for comprehending heavenly Tao? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was convinced. Of course, if you and I eat it for a few more years, we'll definitely comprehend it. Little Silver. Alright. Spirit light flashed in Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's hand, and a bib appeared in it, which he gave to Little Silver. Wear it well. It wouldn't be good if your saliva dripped when you eat it. I had Brother Ling enlighten me on this bib. It's very resistant to corrosion. Your saliva is too terrifying. It can even dissolve a soul formation cultivator. Little Silver couldn't help roaring. That's phlegm. It's phlegm. Chapter 468. For Immortal Toya, this wasn't a loss at all. It was just a branch in Songhai City. At most, it was the same price as one of his alchemy furnaces. At worst, he could just buy one less new model next month. Who asked Ling Jinren to have such tastes? In any case, as long as he could save face in front of his two disciples, Immortal Toya felt that everything was negotiable. Wang Ling hadn't expected Immortal Toya to give him a branch, which made him feel a little excited. After giving him the annual VIP card, there was finally a new way to give him a gift, directly to the shop. As expected, alchemists were a bunch of rich and overbearing people. Immortal Toya went upstairs, followed closely by Jin Shi and Yin Shi with relaxed expressions on their faces. When he had boasted downstairs just now that he was evenly matched with Wang Ling, these two little things weren't nervous anymore. But he had been a little embarrassed. When they reached Wang Ling's bedroom, Immortal Toya raised his hands and pushed them in front of him. This is Senior Ling. It's your first time meeting him, so come and greet him. Hello, Senior Ling. Jin Shi and Yin Shi nodded, and the two siblings stood on either side of Wang Ling and bowed to him. Wang Ling nodded. Jin Shi and Yin Shi were very polite, which was what they had been taught since they were young. Even if they had any thoughts, they wouldn't show it. Besides, their hearts were very clean, and they didn't have any thoughts at all. Right now, Jinshi and Inshi were just curious about the things around them. After all, their living environment would definitely be different after they officially entered the city from the relatively closed environment of Chrysanthemum Island. Wang Ling could quite understand why Immortal Toya wanted the two siblings to adapt to the environment ahead of time. When he heard Wang Ling's reply, even if it was just one word, Immortal Toya's heart blossomed with joy. Senior Ling personally giving a reply. This was such a rare opportunity. This was Jinshi and Inshi's first time meeting Senior Ling, and they actually received a reply. As expected of his disciples, they were indeed promising talents. You two wait for me at the door. Immortal Toya smiled gently at Jinshi and Inshi. Yes, Shifu. Jinshi and Inshi looked at each other, then obediently stood side by side at the door. To tell the truth, these two children were really very likable. Then, he raised his eyebrows and took out 2 packets of crispy noodle snacks from the drawer. He went straight to the door of the room and handed them to the siblings. He had specially enchanted this crispy noodle snack. Thanks to Immortal Toya's special training, Jinshi and Inshi's broken spirit roots had been repaired very well, and they had reached the foundation establishment stage at just 13 years old. But the potential of their spirit roots definitely hadn't been fully developed yet. Compared with the ones for Little Silver, these 2 packets of crispy noodle snacks were more suitable for Jinshi and Inshi to eat, and would help them develop their potential. When Jinshi and Inshi took the crispy noodle snacks, they felt that this Senior Ling's grip was a little too strong, and they had to tug several times before they finally got the crispy noodle snacks. Jinshi and Inshi. Thank you, Senior. Immortal Toya was directly startled when Wang Ling gave it to him, and his mouth dropped open with a flattered expression on his face. Senior Ling, why are you giving me such a big gift? Wang Ling waved his hand lightly. Feng Xing had given him these crispy noodle snacks last time, and he hadn't had time to finish them yet. There were only 2 packets left. Wang Ling felt that it wasn't easy for 2 children to visit his house, so there was no need for him to be so stingy. He wasn't stingy at all. It was just that when he handed over the crispy noodle snacks, his hands trembled a little. This was a normal reaction. He had struck it big this time. Sure enough, bringing Jinshi and Inshi to Senior Ling had been the right choice. Immortal Toya sighed with emotion in his heart, and he couldn't help rubbing Jinshi and Inshi's heads excitedly. The 2 of you are really born with good fortune. I'm proud of you. Jinshi and Inshi tilted their heads, completely unable to understand why their Shifu was so excited. It was just 2 packets of snacks. Closing the door, Immortal Toya began to give the girl in gray a full physical examination. Ah, what a beautiful girl. The moment he saw her, Immortal Toya sighed with emotion. To be honest, Immortal Toya found it a little hard to believe that this girl had actually been rescued from an alien planet, and in the belly of a Kuan at that. Those extinct prehistoric vicious beasts were actually still alive. Immortal Toya took a deep breath, then took out his secret medicine. He had his own unique method of diagnosis and treatment. Generally speaking, when someone came to him for a checkup, he had to make sure that there was no one in the room before he did it. But now that he was facing Wang Ling, it didn't matter. Senior Ling's realm was so profound that he wouldn't think much of this secret technique of his. Little Silver and Dog 2 moved aside. Immortal Toya had met Dog 2 and Little Silver before, and had also heard that they were now Senior Ling's contract beasts. But today was Immortal Toya's first time seeing Little Silver in human form. To be honest, if he hadn't seen Little Silver's original form, he would have really thought that Little Silver was a girl. Calming his thoughts, Immortal Toya carefully pinched the tube of reagent, then took out a drop of medicine and dripped it on the girl. In the end, before the drop of medicine could fall, it was blocked by the glow of the girl's gray Taoist robe. This isn't a simple robe. Immortal Toya said. This tube of potion was a special liquid vaporized by him. It was non-toxic, harmless, and perfectly safe. Every cultivator had spiritual energy in their body, and the function of this tube of potion was to draw out the spiritual energy adhered to the cultivator's skin and transform it into different colors to determine the cultivator's identity. If the girl's lethargy stemmed from some kind of poison, the color of the spirit chi would change to dark black or dark purple. Generally speaking, there were two conditions that could cause a cultivator to fall into a coma. The first was a poison that wouldn't be life-threatening. As long as the cultivator's vital signs were stable, they could sleep like a vegetable. The second condition was a primary form of lethargy, which required Immortal Toya to take the girl to the island for further testing. Brother Little Silver, Brother Dog, can either of you help me open this girl's collar a little? Immortal Toya said. We can't. Only Master can touch her clothes. Little Silver shook his head. Saying this, he tried to reach out to touch the girl in gray. In the end, the gray robe really did emit a strong glow, which formed a resistance that blocked Little Silver's hand, and he couldn't get close at all. Loopy Toad was weaker than Little Silver to begin with, so it also couldn't touch her. Wang Ling sighed. This time, he really had to do it himself. Just as Wang Ling was about to open the girl's collar, Mother Wang came in with several glasses of broccoli juice. Little Dong, have some juice. Little Lei delivered the broccoli last night. It's very fresh. Wang Ling, Immortal Toya, Little Silver and Dog too. Mother Wang smiled at everyone with the juice, then took 2 steps back and closed the door. Chapter 469. For some reason, when Loopy Toad saw this data, it felt that these skills were a little unreliable. First of all, the names were very strange. Will this work? What kind of spirit technique has this kind of name? Loopy Toad was too lazy to type, and directly pressed the voice button to chat. Little Silver immediately replied, I made up the names of the spirit techniques. They weren't originally called this. These spirit techniques were originally from a holy beast of the dog clan. I've read their scrolls, but I can't remember the specific names. I only remember how to use them, so just make do with them. Loopy Toad couldn't help scratching its head, as it felt its scalp tingle. Is there anything with a normal name? Yes. Little Silver very quickly sent a new set, and then wrote a note at the bottom of the file. This is a complete set of fist techniques. After all, it's an advanced level 5 spirit technique. If you can learn it, you can beat 100 people at once. A level 5 spirit technique? Loopy Toad felt that at its current level, it still wasn't at the level where it could learn a level 5 spirit technique. To use a level 5 spirit technique, it would need to reach first class at the very least. Given its current progress, however, it would still take a long time for it to reach first class. However, it wasn't a problem to understand the structure of a spirit technique in advance. It was like a mathematical formula. You might not be able to solve the problem before you learned more advanced mathematics, but you could still memorize the formula. Thinking this, Loopy Toad opened the second set of data that Little Silver had sent. As Little Silver had said, the name of the second set of techniques was very normal, but because they were both using voice chat, Loopy Toad noticed that the fist techniques that Little Silver was talking about were actually dog techniques. This was a combination fist technique with 7 forms in total, from Basic Dog Technique 1, Basic Dog Technique 2, Basic Dog Technique 3, all the way to Basic Dog Technique 7. In any case, compared with the spirit techniques that Little Silver had sent before, Loopy Toad felt that this combination dog technique was much more reliable. First, the name wasn't strange. Second, it was obvious that this was a proper spirit technique of the dog clan, so it could be learned. Seeing that Loopy Toad didn't reply for a long time after accepting the data, Little Silver couldn't help saying, Let me tell you, this spirit technique is very difficult. When I stole it from Dog Saint's depository of Buddhist texts back then, it took me a long time to learn it. If you don't know, you can ask me. I can consider teaching you. Little Silver was very pleased with himself when he said this, because Loopy Toad had always bullied him. Now that he had finally found an opportunity to fight back, Little Silver certainly wouldn't miss it. Given Loopy Toad's comprehension ability as a former Demon King, it actually wasn't difficult for it to grasp a level 3 or 4 cultivation technique. But from the 4th level to the 5th level, that was a step. The difference in difficulty was like the difference between junior high school mathematics and advanced university mathematics. Under normal circumstances without guidance, it would take a very long time to learn by oneself. And the most important point was that when Little Silver had secretly learned them, he had been looking at the original copy of this basic dog skills. And the diagrams on it were extremely detailed. What Loopy Toad had now was information that it had compiled from its own memory, so it might have overlooked some of the important points. This undoubtedly made it very difficult for Loopy Toad to study. Making a comeback would definitely not be as detailed as the original. For example, Wang Ling's 8 classes of divine weapons was a good example. Some of the artifacts that were originally on the market couldn't be found at all. "You want to teach me?" Loopy Toad asked when it heard Little Silver's smug inquiry. Little Silver felt like he had something on Loopy Toad, and he was overjoyed. That's right. If you have anything to ask me. I'll think about it. Let me tell you. After Dog Saint was captured and turned into a pot of dog meat back then, the holy beasts of the dog clan were all wiped out. So currently, I'm the only one who knows how to use these dog skills. Loopy Toad was startled. Was Dog Saint that miserable? Little Silver sighed. Like I said, it seems that I'm the only holy beast left in the world now. Holy beasts may be powerful, but they take a long time to grow. I've been living like a coward for 8,000 years. 8,000 years. That's why I have the ability to protect myself now. Loopy Toad. Thinking back, Dog Saint was indeed miserable back then. Back then, someone spread a rumor that the heart of a holy beast could help people comprehend heavenly Tao, heal hidden injuries and so on, which triggered a catastrophe in our holy beast circle. As far as I know, Dog Saint's dog clan was the first to suffer. Speaking up to this point, Little Silver couldn't help feeling a trace of sadness on his face, as he spoke in a very resentful tone. Loopy Toad was very curious. Why? Don't you holy beasts all have your own territory? The territory Loopy Toad was talking about wasn't just a simple territory, but a secret realm similar to a small world. In order to protect their own clans, the leaders of holy beasts had the ability to open up their own secret realms for their clans to survive. You're asking me why? Speaking up to this point, Little Silver sighed again. Who told Dog Saint to pee wherever he wanted? Loopy Toad. Little Silver. Take Dog Saint for example. When this guy sees a pole, he can't help peeing in it. When he sees a pole, he can't help peeing in it. In the end, those cultivators who went to search for holy beasts relied on peeing to find him. They broke the entrance to the secret land he set up, and directly captured him alive. They directly beat him back to his original form, burned his Taoist temple, captured his dog clan. Finally, they stewed him in front of the entire dog clan. Loopy Toad. How do you know so much? Little Silver. Because I was hiding in the dog clan's depository of Buddhist texts at the time. Loopy Toad. Didn't you try to save him? Little Silver. What could I do when that group of people broke in? I was very weak at the time. If I had run out, I would have most likely been stewed as well. Those cultivators were really too savage, and each and every one of them was at the almighty level. Dog Saint was just unlucky. If only 1 or 2 of them had broken in, he would have been able to deal with them. The problem was that the pee attracted too many people. Hearing this, Loopy Toad couldn't help sighing. It really wasn't easy for you to live until now. That's right. I've always thought how great it would be if I had a holy beast companion. Little Silver said. Dog Saint's incident actually happened a long time ago, but I still remember it. Loopy Toad sent a voice reply. After experiencing something like that, no one would ever forget it. Little Silver shook his head. No. The main thing is that when that group of people stewed Dog Saint, the spicy condiments they used were really fragrant. I could smell it even from hiding in the depository of Buddhist texts. Loopy Toad. After saying this, Little Silver chuckled. So after saying so much, do you want me to teach you the dog skills? Loopy Toad. No need. I can ask my Wang Ling. Chapter 470. Isn't Master busy with his midterm exams? How can you trouble him? For some reason, when Little Silver said these words, he felt rather powerless. Sure enough, it was great to be able to live with Master. He could even consult him on some bizarre spirit techniques and spells. Although Dog Saint had been stewed, and all the holy beasts of the dog clan had been wiped out, Little Silver didn't doubt Wang Ling's teaching ability in the slightest. Spellmasters were a new and popular profession in the cultivation circle, and their role was to answer all kinds of questions people had when learning spells or melee spirit techniques. They didn't necessarily know the spells or spirit techniques themselves, but they could often analyze the main points based on theoretical knowledge, thereby greatly reducing the time it took for people to learn a spell or melee spirit technique. It was like a lot of swimming coaches who taught children how to swim. Many of them actually didn't know how to swim. After all, they taught children swimming in shallow water, and in any case, no one would drown. Little Silver's heart crumbled a little, and at the same time, he was a little envious as he felt very conflicted. Sure enough, it was always better to come first. But when on earth would he be able to sign the contract? Little Silver had actually been beating around the bush with Wang Ling before about signing the contract. He had carefully thought that if Master didn't want to sign the contract at all, he wouldn't have let Little Silver live here at all, and let grenade throwing take care of him. Grenade throwing was probably Master's best friend. All of a sudden, Little Silver was very worried that Wang Ling would despise him. Why not ask Loopy Toad to ask Wang Ling on his behalf, when on Earth they would be able to finalize the contract? Little Silver was a little conflicted and couldn't help sighing in his heart. In the end, it was still his turn to beg Loopy Toad. "Hey, brother dog, are you still there?" He didn't send a voice message, but directly typed it and sent it through the chat window. He then clicked on the shake window in passing. Loopy Toad. In front of the screen, Loopy Toad couldn't help smiling. Normally, when someone switched from voice to text in an instant, it was obvious that they had something important to say. Loopy Toad. "Do you need something from me again?" Loopy Toad remembered that Little Silver had done this several times before, when he had come looking for it. After sending the message in the shaking window, it immediately started to ask it about Wang Ling's life, such as his usual schedule, his various habits, his preferences, and so on. To be honest, after bathing in Little Silver's holy beast blood the last time, Loopy Toad's narcolepsy had indeed eased considerably. Although Little Master Ling had repaid the favor with 20 crispy noodle snack packets, Wang Ling's debt was still tied. Actually, if Little Silver really did come to it for help, Loopy Toad felt that it definitely wouldn't refuse. However, it wasn't very kind of him to casually divulge information about his young master. Loopy Toad thought that it was a very loyal dog. It was a dog that would never betray its master. There was no way it would betray Wang Ling, unless he stepped over its body, the steel plate toad. That was indeed what Loopy Toad had been thinking before it received Little Silver's red transfer. Little Silver typed very slowly and carefully, as if he had been thinking for a long time, before plucking up the courage to send the message. "I want to ask Brother Dog to help me ask when on Earth Master will sign a contract with me." Actually, he felt that asking Little Silver directly like this wasn't very good, and Master might even resent it. But whether it was a spirit beast or a holy beast, once they recognized their master, only the guarantee of a contract could give them a sense of security. Loopy Toad remembered that Wang Ling had mentioned signing a contract with Little Silver at home before. But it just so happened that it was time for the midterm exams recently, so the contract had been put on hold. In fact, Loopy Toad knew that Wang Ling hadn't forgotten about it. After this busy period, it would form a contract with Little Silver sooner or later. There was only one holy beast in the world now. Out of consideration for the protection of this rare animal, Loopy Toad felt that Wang Ling wouldn't forget about the contract. But Little Master Ling was only 16 years old after all. For a child at this age, there was nothing more important than studying. Loopy Toad felt that there was probably no one in the world who could fight Little Master Ling head-on. But there was only one thing that could fight Little Master Ling, and even have a chance to defeat him. And that was exams. Small boss midterm exams, big boss final exams. It couldn't get any more real. Loopy Toad stared at the screen and thought for a while, then simply typed, "Little Silver, Do you think I look like a dog that betrays its master? When Loopy Toad typed this string of words, Little Silver almost spat out a mouthful of holy blood. Little Silver couldn't help marveling at how thick the skin on Loopy Toad's green dog face was to be able to say something like this. Little Silver couldn't help sending Zhuge Liang's "I've never seen such a shameless person" emoji. However, he crossed out the word person and changed it to dog. Little Silver couldn't help straightening up on the sofa. His silver hair fell over his shoulders, and he even threw the broccoli pillow in his hands aside in anger. He typed indignantly, "Don't you know whether or not a certain dog accepted a red packet last time?" But while he typed, Little Silver didn't dare directly send it, and instead pressed the back button one after another to completely delete the words. After all, the only bridge he had to master now was actually Loopy Toad. If this bridge collapsed, he might never be able to cross it again. No, he had to endure it. Twitching the corner of his mouth, Little Silver sent Loopy Toad a red packet of 2000 HNY. 2000 HNY for one question was the rule that Loopy Toad had set last time. Just take it as spending money to avert disaster. Little Silver actually understood this point quite well. In any case, the money wasn't his. It was Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal who had given him his pocket money. After confirming that it had received the red packet, Loopy Toad couldn't help nodding its head and sending a thumbs up in return. "You're smart, brother Little Silver. I didn't expect you to still remember the 2000 HNY target I set for you last time." In fact, Loopy Toad had casually asked for 2000 HNY last time, but it hadn't expected Little Silver to actually give it to him. But to be honest, Loopy Toad had actually lived in human society for so long, and it had eaten and drank at the Wong family's small villa. It didn't have any income, let alone any savings. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had given Little Silver his pocket money. In comparison, Loopy Toad didn't have any money at all. Little Master Ling was thrifty by nature. Apart from crispy noodle snacks, he basically didn't have any other expenses. So when Loopy Toad saw the transfer of 2000 HNY, it couldn't help sighing. "I was going to charge you less this time." Hearing this, Little Silver almost couldn't help coughing up blood. "Then give it back." Loopy Toad, No. I've already accepted it. There's no reason to return it. I'll remember this. I'll tell my little master." Chapter 471. The money wasn't Little Silver's, and he actually didn't feel bad about spending it at all. Furthermore, he actually didn't have any concept of currency in human society, but he felt that a mere 2000 HNY was probably just a fraction. Little Silver felt that it wouldn't be a loss if he could exchange this spare change for information on Master. In fact, Little Silver didn't know that for a 16-year-old high school student who usually scrimped to buy snacks, and whose dad docked his allowance for all sorts of reasons all day long, this amount of money was simply a huge sum of money for his master. Loopy Toad looked at the savings in its electronic wallet, including what it had scammed Little Silver the last time, and after deducting the amount it had given to Taoist Guang previously, it now had a huge sum of almost 10,000 HNY. "By the way, how much did Senior Immortal give you?" Loopy Toad was very curious. "He bound me to his electronic wallet in another account. He said that I could use the money in it." Little Silver took a screenshot and sent it to Loopy Toad. Loopy Toad was stupefied when it saw it. It started with 1 and was followed by a total of 6 digits. This was basically hooking up with a domineering CEO. It was true that cultivators were very rich, but not every cultivator was so rich, except for second-generation rich kids like Lin Xiaozong. For the most part, even people of the same age as Wang Ling in Foundation Establishment High School would be taught the correct concept of money by their parents at a very young age. It was very important to learn how to manage money. Only by establishing a good concept of money from a young age would you understand how difficult it was to make money. So while Wang Ling usually seemed stingy, he actually couldn't be blamed entirely. In Loopy Toad's eyes, this was much better than those rich kids who squandered their parents' money everywhere. But to be honest, the money in Little Silver's electronic wallet was probably just a fraction to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Loopy Toad remembered that when it had bought Daoist Guang that high-tech smart computer for the elderly, it had cost several 100,000 HNY in total, almost 1 million HNY. In the end, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had bought it without batting an eye. It was very clear that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal wasn't short of money. The cultivation forum run by Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was now flourishing with each passing day. Every day, there would be people breaking gossip about the cultivation world, which directly attracted a lot of traffic from onlookers. In the current cultivation era, the internet economy was also an important part of development, and traffic meant advertising. All these years, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had amassed a fortune just by collecting advertising fees from cultivation dating apps and various magic treasure shops. Needless to say, this perfected monarch would occasionally play the role of great death-courting senior and take on missions to help the weak. Now that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had that infinite resurrection ring, Loopy Toad felt that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could act even more unscrupulously. Little Silver stretched out his hand and took out a wooden comb. Combing his messy silver hair with one hand, he sent a voice message. "Remember to tell Master for me. Don't forget." "Don't worry, I'm definitely reliable," Loopy Toad replied. "I'll study the basic dog skills you sent me later. The first and second forms are both level 4, so I can learn them." Little Silver hadn't expected Loopy Toad to be so hardworking, and couldn't help sking. But at the same time, he thought of another question and couldn't help asking. "By the way, what on earth do you want money for? Grenade throwing gave me so much money, but I don't know how to use it." "What else to have fun?" Loopy Toad answered very bluntly. "To have fun? Little Silver. What do you mean?" Loopy Toad was sure that Little Silver also didn't understand what this so-called fun meant, and didn't bother to explain. It felt that holy beasts were actually pretty boring. As the only holy beast in the world who had lived an ignoble existence for 8,000 years, it had only just come into contact with human society, and didn't understand its beauty at all. People who died without money to spend, people who were alive without money to spend, and people who were alive without money to spend. These were the three situations that Loopy Toad found pretty hard to bear. Loopy Toad said, "You have to find your own fun. Don't just stay at home all day." Little Silver. "I had a phone at home before, but playing with it was pretty boring." Loopy Toad. "If you're bored, cultivate with the crispy noodle snacks that Little Master Ling gave you. Don't waste time." "What did you say?" Little Silver was startled, and his expression was as stunned as if he had been struck by lightning. "This thing can really cultivate." Loopy Toad's reply to this was one sentence. "Don't waste God's gift recklessly, Little Silver." "I'll try it when I get back." Loopy Toad nodded. As a senior who had mingled in human society for a long time, before it went offline, it couldn't help advising Little Silver earnestly. "The outside world is rich and colorful. You have to learn to go out more. By the way, apart from Senior Immortal's villa and our little master's house, have you been anywhere else?" Little Silver thought for a moment. "The neighborhood near the villa, Loopy Toad." "And?" Little Silver. "The police station. I even got to know a police officer." Loopy Toad sent a fist salute emoji. "Goodbye." Before Little Silver could finish speaking, he noticed that Loopy Toad's profile picture had already turned gray. Looking at its posture, it had probably gone to cultivate. Then Little Silver had to work hard. If it hadn't been for Loopy Toad's reminder, Little Silver really wouldn't have thought that a cheap snack like crispy noodle snacks could actually be used for cultivation. But when all was said and done, these 20 crispy noodle snack packets had been taken from Master, so they should indeed be useful. No wonder Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had looked so ferocious for one crispy noodle snack packet. Now that Little Silver thought about it carefully, it didn't seem unreasonable. But speaking of cultivation, it seemed that he had something to tell Loopy Toad just now, but the words had been in his throat when Loopy Toad had interrupted him. What on earth had he wanted to say? It seemed to be about the side effects of cultivating the basic dog skills. There were some tricks to cultivating these dog skills, and you couldn't cultivate them completely according to the instructions. Although Little Silver had copied them, He had discovered a loophole when he had studied this spirit technique back then, and had improved it as he had studied it. Thus, this set of dog skills wasn't a problem for Little Silver. But it would be a little troublesome if Loopy Toad went astray. But Little Silver couldn't quite remember what this side effect was. This was what he had wanted to say just now. As for the side effects of cultivating the basic dog skills, Little Silver stared at the screen and crossed his arms in deep thought for a while. 3 seconds later, he gave up. Chapter 472. Loopy Toad had already made copies of all the information Little Silver had given it. Nowadays, many cultivation arts and spirit techniques were no longer recorded in the form of jade tubes or scrolls. Admittedly, jade tubes and scrolls had very high collection value. It was true that jade tubes and scrolls had very high collectible value. But for modern cultivators, it was naturally much more convenient to transfer data on cultivation arts and spirit techniques through a computer than scrolls and jade tubes. This included Huaxiao Nation's largest depository of Buddhist texts, Magnificent Immortals Depository of Buddhist texts. All the cultivation art scrolls collected inside had data backups, but ordinary people couldn't get their hands on these data backups, as they were classified information at the national level. There were now a lot of shops selling cultivation arts and spirit techniques on the internet. If you chose the skill you wanted to buy and directly paid for it online, the merchant would transfer it to the cloud through a file-sharing software called SkillCloud. However, only the buyer could receive and open the file, and it couldn't be shared a second time. If you wanted to share it, you had to buy another copy and share it as a gift. Nowadays, copyright was very important when committing crimes, and cultivators' cultivation arts and spirit techniques were no exception. These so-called cultivation arts and spirit techniques were all created by cultivators, apart from Heavenly Tao. Hence, online shops selling cultivation arts and spirit techniques would now contact the creator of the cultivation arts and spirit techniques to buy the copyright or sign a profit-sharing agreement. If you bought the copyright, you would have to pay a huge sum of money in one go, and the subsequent profits from the sale of the cultivation arts and spirit techniques would belong to the copyright holder. Of course, the purchase of the copyright wasn't permanent, and was usually for 10 years. The other was a profit-sharing agreement, which was a one-sided agreement between the creator of the cultivation arts and spirit techniques to share the copyright, and then split the profits 50-50 to achieve a win-win situation. The vast majority of cultivators would choose the second option. Of course, if it was a famous master, not only could they directly sell the copyright to the skill, they could even enjoy the subsequent profit-sharing benefits. To put it bluntly, this had a lot to do with the popularity of the creator of the cultivation arts and spirit techniques. Of course, there were some cultivation arts and spirit techniques that couldn't find an owner, and the copyrights to these skills would all belong to the state. Furthermore, the copyrights to these famous masters and spirit techniques were currently stored in Magnificent Immortals Depository of Buddhist texts and wouldn't be sold publicly. It was July 13th on Thursday in the 12th week of the semester. Father Wong wasn't at home today. Supposedly, he had gone to the eel department with Lai Meng. The computer in the study happened to be empty, so Loopy Toad used Father Wong's computer to browse online. After backing up the information that Little Silver had transferred to it, Loopy Toad specially browsed skill shops to check if there was any information on the sale of the basic dog skills. In the end, the comprehensive search bar showed 0, not a single one. This was a normal situation, which just showed how long this set of dog skills had a long history. After all, it had been passed down from Dog Saints era, when holy beasts hadn't been completely destroyed and Little Silver had still been very young. The history of the basic dog skills was perhaps comparable to that of the 10 founding generals, or even much older than that group of people. Loopy Toad flipped through the information on the basic dog skills through its electronic browser, which it had only skimmed through on its phone before. There were 7 forms of dog skills in total, but the first and second forms were level 4. Loopy Toad felt that it could try to learn them with its own efforts. Loopy Toad felt that relying on Little Master Ling for everything was a pretty spineless act. After carefully reading the instructions in the information, Loopy Toad tried to circulate spirit energy through its meridians according to the instructions. In the end, it came to the conclusion that it could completely learn the first form of the basic dog skills on its own. But starting from the second form, the dog skills were indeed more difficult. Loopy Toad would have to carefully ponder over them, even if they were level 4 spirit techniques. Loopy Toad cupped its chin in its hands as it pondered. Actually, at this time, it would be best if someone gave it some pointers. While it was thinking this, Loopy Toad saw a pop-up advertisement pop up in the online skills shop it was browsing. Loopy Toad stretched out its hand to close the pop-up, but in the end it saw that it said, "Still troubled by learning cultivation arts and spirit techniques? Well-known grandmasters, online allies, personal guidance. Any spirit technique is guaranteed to be taught." This was the Spellmaster that Loopy Toad had mentioned before, an emerging profession that specialized in teaching others cultivation arts and spirit techniques in a short period of time for profit. Actually, Loopy Toad had only heard of it before, but had never personally encountered it. Now that it saw this pop-up advertisement, it was instantly a little curious. Loopy Toad clicked on the ad, and the link directly jumped to the window of an online shop. System prompt: "Welcome to Salted Fish Skills Shop. Customer service number 018 will be at your service." Loopy Toad waited for a while, and the customer service little sister sent a smiley face. "Hello, how should I address you?" Loopy Toad: "My surname is Tu." Customer service number 018: "Sir or madam?" Loopy Toad: "I'm a dog, the domestic kind." Customer service number 018: Doing her best to compose herself, this customer service number 018 specially checked the credit history of Loopy Toad's account. When she found that its personal credit rating was excellent and had reached the level of a triple crown, she instantly breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at the seller's credit rating, this probably wasn't a prank. Customer service number 018 realized that at that moment, the person sitting on the other side of her computer might really be a dog. Furthermore, this actually wasn't anything to be surprised about. Nowadays, domestic spirit beasts were all intelligent, but there were actually very few who knew how to operate a computer. But the truth was that Loopy Toad's credit record wasn't that high, because this computer belonged to Father Wong. Loopy Toad only realized that it had forgotten to switch accounts after the customer service little sister's first message. But it didn't matter. In any case, it was just asking, and wasn't planning to buy anything. On the other side, the customer service little sister had already composed herself and replied with a smile, "May I ask what Mr. Dog 2 needs?" Seeing this form of address, it was Loopy Toad's turn to suck in a breath. "I want to ask if your spellmasters can teach spirit beast skills?" Customer service number 018 nodded. "Of course. Our spellmasters are very well-rounded, and some of them have experience as spirit beast trainers. However, our spellmasters quote prices based on the difficulty of the skill. As long as Mr. Dog 2 accepts the price, we'll definitely be able to teach you." Loopy Toad: "I see." In fact, Loopy Toad already suspected this shop of false advertising, because in this world, there were no spells that could be taught 100%. But Loopy Toad still thought this was very interesting, and replied, "Do you have any recommended spellmasters? Want to chat?" Customer service number 018: "All right, please wait a moment, Mr. Dog 2. I'll help you switch to the spellmaster chat window." About a minute later, a system prompt appeared again. "Technician number 003 is ready to serve you." Loopy Toad: "What freaking technician? Chapter 473. This was Loopy Toad's first time coming into contact with an online skill shop, and it couldn't help being dazed when it saw the system prompt. How had a spellmaster become a technician? But when Loopy Toad thought about it carefully, it realized that there was nothing wrong with this title. After all, a spellmaster had another name, skillmaster, or technician for short. Technician 003 was very enthusiastic. "Hello, Mr. Dog 2. What kind of art or spirit technique would you like to consult?" Loopy Toad was curious. You can teach spirit beast skills? Technician 003 was blank for a moment before he replied. Don't worry, sir. I have a lot of experience as a pet trainer. I can teach you. The technician recalled his experience since entering this online shop and said, our online shop actually also has skill books for spirit beasts. Someone has bought them for their spirit beasts before. But this was the first time a spirit beast had personally operated a computer to go shopping in an online shop to buy something. Loopy Toad. What's the process? Technician 003 replied. It's like this, there are two ways. One is for you to spend a certain amount in our online shop, and we'll give you technician teaching services as a complimentary gift. The other is for you to provide relevant information on the skill, and we'll evaluate the skill based on its class and difficulty. When Technician 003 said this, Loopy Toad wasn't in a hurry to reply. Instead, it opened the online shop and carefully looked at the skill scrolls on sale. Most of the skill scrolls sold online were level 1 to level 2. There were very few level 3 scrolls, and level 4 scrolls could basically be considered the treasures of the shop. Furthermore, they were sky-high prices. A full 500,000 immortal gold bars. Converted into HNY. That was over 100 million. This was no less than the average market price of a 9th-class holy weapon. Loopy Toad couldn't help sking when it saw this, and then asked, what about confidentiality? Technician 003. Currently, the country has a specialized spellmaster platform. If Mr. Dog 2 is able to provide the skill book, we'll contact you on the spellmaster platform. Once we've appraised the skill book's difficulty and determined the price, you can come to our online shop to bid for the tuition fee. Don't worry, Mr. Dog 2. Only the two of us can see the skill book, and it can't be copied or forwarded. You can rest assured about confidentiality. Nowadays, there are a lot of lawsuits for copyright infringement. As long as it's a legitimate platform and a legitimate spellmaster, they will pay more attention to this issue. No one will make things difficult for themselves, right? Moreover, the infringement fee for this skill book is very high. Loopy Toad nodded, and felt that what this Technician 003 said seemed to make sense. At this time, Technician 003 sent a link. Mr. Second, if you think it's okay, please click on the link to this Spellmaster platform. Let's talk about it. Loopy Toad quickly replied, No, I still don't think it's reliable. My spirit technique is very difficult. The technician on the other side was obviously stunned, and did not reply for a long time. It was true that spirit beasts had spiritual intelligence, but there were actually very few who could learn to operate a computer on their own. Considering this, the technician felt that Loopy Toad's grade wasn't low. Mr. Dog 2, may I ask what grade it is now? Loopy Toad replied in a low voice, 3rd class. Actually, he had already reached rank 2 a long time ago. Technician 003 already had an idea. Alright, Mr. Buttface. I can guarantee you that I can teach you the skills of rank 1 to rank 3 spirit beasts. No matter if it's from our shop or if you provide it. Rank 4 skills are charged based on their difficulty. Even if I don't know them, I can recommend my Sherfu to you. Also, I strongly recommend the rare rank 3 spirit technique in our salted fish skill shop. Salted fish stab. This is a skill that our shop owner personally designed for spirit beasts. And it's very useful. Loopy Toad. In this day and age, had the names of new spiritual techniques and spells become so random? Loopy Toad had thought that Little Silver Spirit Dog Skin 9000 Kicks and Dog Voice Lotus Sitting were already casual enough. Who would have thought that the names in this shop were getting more and more casual? Loopy Toad couldn't help complaining. The names of your skills don't sound good. Technician 003 sent a shrug emoji. It's fine as long as they're useful and practical. In the past, those spirit techniques and spells with nice names actually weren't that powerful when they were actually used. He explained patiently. And what's the most important thing? The quality of modern cultivators was getting better and better. They wouldn't deliberately shout out the name of their skill before using it. In the past, the older generation of cultivators wanted to save face, so they designed the names of the spiritual techniques and spells that they created to be very awesome. But now reality tells us that it's useless. Loopy Toad. Loopy Toad actually felt that Technician 003's words made sense. Nowadays, there was basically no longer the wisdom of deliberately shouting out the names of your spells before a battle. This was a completely unnecessary behavior. If it was Little Master Ling, it would be even simpler and cruder. Because Little Master Ling didn't need to use any skills at all. If it wasn't a slap, it was a fist. Technician 003. Excuse me, Mr. Buttface, what do you think? Loopy Toad replied. It's like this, it's not that I don't want to buy it. It's that I don't think you can teach me. My spirit technique is a close-range fist technique, and only the first two forms are level 4. The rest are all level 5. Seeing Loopy Toad's reply, Technician 003's heart was suddenly in turmoil. Level 5, as a spell master, he was very sensitive to the levels of cultivation arts and spirit techniques. It went without saying how valuable a level 5 skill was, but the most precious treasure of their shop was only a level 4 one. For things like cultivation arts and spirit technique books, the difference in value between level 1 and level 2 wasn't particularly large, but from level 3 onwards, each increase in level was like a whole new world. A level 5 spirit beast spirit technique, Technician 003 knew very well that he really couldn't teach it. Technician 003 broke out in a sweat. Mr. Buttface, I indeed can't teach you level 5, but I think my Shifu might be able to. Just follow the link I sent you just now, and enter the number 7046204442 into the Spellmaster ID search bar. Loopy Toad replied very politely, Alright, thank you. Technician 003 was a little unresigned. Then does Mr. Buttface not like any of the skills in our shop? Loopy Toad. No. The names of the skills in your shop are too strange. They're Zinging Strike and Gay Stare. Technician 003. Loopy Toad. Alright. You don't have to be too sad. I didn't want to buy it in the first place. I was just asking. Behind the screen, Technician 003 slammed the keyboard. F***K. On the other side, Loopy Toad curiously opened the Spellmaster platform and typed in the ID that Technician 003 had given it, 7046204442. Then a Spellmaster's profile ID popped up. And Loopy Toad actually knew this person. Wei Ji. Chapter 474. Loopy Toad rubbed its eyes and confirmed that this was indeed Wei Ji's avatar. He was a sunny pretty boy who looked a little childish. He wasn't tall, could withstand electricity, had strong resistance to beatings, moved in a flirtatious manner, and gave off a very reliable vibe. These were Loopy Toad's first impressions of Wei Ji. Loopy Toad remembered that they hadn't contacted each other since a few days ago, when they had gone deep into the heart of the Demon Hunters Association and exposed their plot to engage in illegal spirit beast trading. In order to ensure its own safety, Loopy Toad had been hiding in Ajua's backpack after his group had arrived, while Wei Ji had been directly treated as the first witness to cooperate with Ajua's follow-up investigation and report the Demon Hunters Association. After that, the exposure of the Demon Hunters Association's underground trading practices had come to light. It actually wasn't just the government department that Aujua represented, but also the official pet trainers guild that Wei Ji represented. If there was no trade, there was no killing. Loopy Toad still remembered the scene it had seen that day when it had walked through the Demon Hunters Association's trading street. The captured spirit beasts had struggled and roared in their cages, as they had been abused and beaten. A lot of them had even been on the verge of death, because they had resisted with all their might, and had been drugged before being directly skinned alive by those inhumane members of the Demon Hunters Association. Because the skin skinned alive was softer than when it was skinned dead. Loopy Toad had been in a hurry to leave at the time, so it hadn't left Wei Ji's contact information. Loopy Toad also hadn't thought of contacting him, because it was sure that Wei Ji would be very busy at this time. After all, Wei Ji was representing the Pet Trainers Guild and cooperating with the police to sweep up suspected Demon Hunters Association organizations across the country and crack down on illegal spirit beast trading. The Pet Trainers Guild's philosophy was to promote harmonious coexistence between people and spirit beasts. Although pet trainers and spirit beasts had a contractual relationship, Loopy Toad could actually tell from Wei Ji's pushing large butterfly. In fact, Wei Ji's attitude toward spirit beasts was more like that of his own friends. It wasn't just Wei Ji. For all pet trainers, pet hunter organizations like the Demon Hunters Association were completely unforgivable. Of course, even if Loopy Toad hadn't left Wei Ji's contact information, he still had a peaked cap. Furthermore, Loopy Toad had been to Wei Ji's staff apartment, so it could look for him directly if it wanted to. In fact, the time interval was not very long. It was less than a week. Actually, it was only about 5 days. In the last 5 days, Loopy Toad had paid special attention to the news. The Demon Hunters Association organizations in various places had been exposed one after another, and their members had been arrested one after another. But they still hadn't found any leads on their leader, President Bai. Actually, as one of the informants, Loopy Toad felt that Wei Ji's situation was actually quite dangerous. To be able to run such a large organization and draw in so many members with schemes and plans, the leader behind it was clearly a ruthless character with a high realm and a brain. And the most critical point was that none of the so-called core members of the Demon Hunters Association who had been arrested, like Strong Zhua and his gang, knew what President Bai looked like. They didn't even know his specific voice. After Zhua analyzed the matter, the so-called core members of the Demon Hunters Association weren't actually core members at all. The core members of Immortal Mansion were all soul formation cultivators. For a golden core cultivator like Strong Zhua to be able to become a core elder, in fact, if one thought about it carefully, it really wasn't that scientific. So Zhua and Warden Liang's judgment was that this so-called core member was in fact a scapegoat for the real core members of the Demon Hunters Association. Even Zhua himself had been taken aback when he had analyzed the situation back then. He was very sensitive to the word scapegoat. Loopy Toad stayed on the Spellmaster platform for a while before it finally opened the private chat box and typed, "Are you there? Is pushing large butterfly okay?" At the same time, Wei Ji saw the private chat window pop up and couldn't help frowning. Someone had suddenly popped up and even knew that he was carrying his most treasured pet with him. Wei Ji thought hard for a bit, and his expression immediately turned nervous. That could only be the case. The worst-case scenario. It was also the last thing he wanted to see. Wei Ji stared at the chat window, and his forehead started to sweat as he gritted his teeth and typed, "Dream on. I won't give in. Loopy Toad." Wei Ji snorted. What Loopy Toad had said just now had completely emboldened him. "You're President Bai of the Demon Hunters Association, right? Let me tell you, I was the one who exposed the Demon Hunters Association that you meticulously set up. Let me tell you, I, Wei Ji, don't have much else, but I have backbone. The Pet Trainers Guild that I represent will never bow to any evil force. Don't even think about using my pushing large butterfly to threaten me." Loopy Toad was already stupefied as it stared at the words on the screen. "Wei Ji, why aren't you saying anything? If you, President Bai, have the ability, feel free to fire at my pushing large butterfly. Go ahead and fire. Don't look down on me. I, Wei Ji, will still be its owner in the future." Loopy Toad couldn't help but slap its paws loudly at this wonderful performance. Sometimes, having too many imaginative emperors around you is really troublesome. Bro, we haven't seen each other for 5 days, and you've already become mentally weak? Loopy Toad typed. "It was one of your little disciples, Technician 003 of Salted Fish Skills Shop, who recommended me." Seeing this, Wei Ji heaved a sigh of relief and reacted. Because a few minutes ago, one of his disciples had indeed complained to him about a strange customer from the skills shop. The customer was a dog, and when he entered the shop, he didn't buy anything and just came to chat. This had taken up a lot of time. At that time, Wei Ji had actually wondered if that dog was Loopy Toad. After all, given Wei Ji's limited knowledge, there weren't many spirit dogs with such high IQ, and even fewer knew how to operate a computer. The reason why many spirit beasts could understand humans was because of the establishment of the spirit beast contract. which formed a spiritual connection between the spirit beast and its master. In fact, most spirit beasts couldn't read Chinese characters unless they cultivated to the stage where they could take human form, let alone learn pinyin and type on a computer. Your brother dog? Wei Ji still didn't dare believe it when he typed this line. When his little disciple 003 had called to complain to him previously, Wei Ji had thought it might just be a coincidence. After all, there were all kinds of strange things in the online world. But now that he knew that it was Loopy Toad on the other side of the screen, Wei Ji still felt the power of fate. Chapter 475. After meeting Loopy Toad at the appraisal center and experiencing so many things, Wei Ji felt that the fate between him and Loopy Toad wasn't shallow. But for them to run into each other online seemed a little metaphysical. Wei Ji couldn't help but sigh. He directly typed a string of words in the private chat window on the platform. Online marriage is linked by a single thread. It's fate that we met. Loopy Toad stared at these words, feeling like it had heard them somewhere before. It was startled. You're also watching Lord Island's live stream? Loopy Toad was very careful when it typed, and it made a clear distinction between the nickname Lord Island and the Taoist name Taoist Guang. Since most people didn't know Lord Island's true identity, Loopy Toad naturally wouldn't reveal it. That's right, didn't Lord Island say these lines before? This Lord Island is amazing. Newbie streamer, you broke 1 million viewers in less than a week. Wei Ji said in the chat window. Loopy Toad hadn't expected Taoist Guang's live stream to be watched by so many people. At first glance, it seemed like everyone around them was watching. But Loopy Toad realized that Wei Ji, and it actually had a lot to talk about. It didn't know if it was because Wei Ji often interacted with spirit beasts, but Loopy Toad always felt that Wei Ji was very approachable. One of the most important criteria for making friends was to be able to converse well. So if Loopy Toad had to think about it, of its 3 friends now, one was Dopey Gua, one was Little Silver, and the last was Wei Ji. Dopey Gua was a good friend who selflessly provided her with dog food. Little Silver was inexperienced and of the same kind that Wang Ling could tease. Wei Ji was someone who had already gone on an adventure with him. It could be said that they had a common topic, and the most crucial point. This person was Dopey Gua's legendary uncle. This uncle was obviously not his biological uncle, but he was one of Dopey Gua's many uncles. For Loopy Toad, Dopey Gua's uncle was no less mysterious than grenade-throwing senior Immortal's friend Little Black, who ran a secret laboratory on the border, or Immortal Jin Yuan, whose name it had only heard of but never seen. As for Wang Ling, the reason why Loopy Toad hadn't added Little Master Ling to its circle of friends was even simpler. Little Master would always be Little Master. This was something that must be distinguished. Friends were for sharing their hearts, while young masters were for hugging their legs. Loopy Toad had thought this through thoroughly. Since when did you become a master spellcaster and accept disciples? Aren't you a pet trainer? Loopy Toad asked after exchanging greetings for a while. This is a side job. There are also differences among spellmasters. Pet trainers like us, who are very familiar with spirit beasts' habits, will often take on the role of spellmasters who specialize in teaching spirit beast skills. Wei Ji replied, also, you've come to my house to take a look. Just based on my house's high-tech ecological environment. Do you think it's free? Moreover, there were still a few rooms that had not been optimized yet. They would have to spend money later on. Just the monthly electricity bill alone is a huge sum. Loopy Toad was startled. Isn't your family pretty rich? Wei Ji. I am a person with dreams, Loopy Toad. Wei Ji said, don't look at me like this. I can at least live on my own with the money I earned. However, I still have so many little fellows here. Not only the pushing large butterfly, but I also have to take care of the other spirit beasts that have signed a contract with me. The electricity bill is just a small amount. Think about it, I have to pay a huge sum just for food expenses. I set a goal for myself every year to sign a contract with at least 2 spirit beasts. At the beginning of this year, I signed a spirit python called Big Snake Wan, which really eats. So for the second half of this year, I signed a contract with a pushing large butterfly. Do you know why? Loopy Toad. Why? Weiji. Because it eats less. Loopy Toad. If things went on like this, Weiji felt that he would soon be so poor that he would have to change from raising spirit beasts to raising insects. Although spirit insects themselves were classified as spirit beasts. Compared with those big spirit beasts, those tiny spirit insects were in fact unpresentable to many pet trainers. Of course, there were also very large spirit insects. But Weiji's current problem was the high cost of food. Big spirit beasts ate a lot, and their appetite might not be any less than his big snake Wan. Since he had chosen to sign contracts with spirit beasts, and one day become the #1 pet trainer, Weiji felt that he should be responsible for the spirit beasts he had signed. So you're doing these side jobs to make money? Loopy Toad hadn't expected Weiji to actually be short of money. That's right, which is why I'm doing multiple jobs now. My main job is a pet trainer, but I'm also a spell master when it comes to spirit beasts, and I specialize in guiding other people's spirit beasts in their cultivation skills. Weiji sighed and typed bitterly. Sometimes I'll even become a substitute leveler. Substitute training? I help other people's spirit beasts, take them out to cultivate, and bring them back after they advance a level. Weiji said, this is the fastest way to make money, but it's also the least. Professional pet trainers like us can only rely on this way to make money, because our realms aren't very high. So food expenses have always been a big problem. Actually, as the former 10th generation clan leader of the sky-swallowing toad clan, Loopy Toad had a deep understanding of why spirit beasts could eat so much. Back then, the entire Toad clan had to consume hundreds of millions of tons of flies in a day's supply of food. Furthermore, these flies were different from those in the human world. They were all big demon flies, and one demon fly could be as big as an elephant. Cultivators paid particular attention to fasting, and the higher a cultivator's realm, the less food they ate. Spirit beasts, on the other hand, actually ate a lot. Why did Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal put so much money in Little Silver's electronic wallet? In fact, most of it was for Little Silver's meals and takeout. In comparison, Loopy Toad suddenly realized that its appetite was also quite small, and was about the same as that of an ordinary domestic spirit dog. Who knew if this was because it cultivated Little Master Ling's modified version of the Demon King Heart Sutra? Brother Dog, do you really want to learn a level 5 spirit technique from the shop my little disciple works in? Weiji asked. Loopy Toad typed on the keyboard. Oh no, I don't have a level 5 spirit technique. I just wanted to tease him. That's what I said. Weiji nodded. Given Loopy Toad's personality, he didn't think there was anything wrong with it. However, Weiji couldn't help sighing as he replied, high-level beast techniques nowadays are too rare. A level 5 spirit beast technique scroll, with copyright and commission, can buy 2 apartments in the inner circle of Jinghua First Tier. The only level 5 technique scroll I've ever seen in my life is a spirit beast transformation spell, which is a little similar to a cultivator's demon transformation spell. The difference is that this spell can even imitate an aura. Oh, Loopy Toad sked. There's such a thing. Didn't my disciple recommend their shop singing strike to you before? Actually, this close combat spirit technique is a set with the spirit beast demon transformation spell I was talking about just now. And they both came from a person called Crying Old Immortal. And this person is the vice president of our Pet Trainers Association, Weiji said. Loopy Toad nodded. I see. Then what's the name of this spirit beast demon transformation spell? I'll go and find out later. Weiji. It's called 100 Changes Little Ling. Chapter 476. Weiji and Loopy Toad chatted online for a long time that day. After about an hour or so, Weiji remembered that they hadn't added each other as friends on the chat app on his phone. They had been chatting since the private chat box on the website. Weiji now had a total of 17 contractual spirit beasts under him. Apart from the pushing large butterfly, there were 9 small and medium-sized spirit beasts, while the remaining 7 were big. The pressure on him was huge. He had to rely purely on the prize money, He had won from participating in various spirit beast competitions, arranged by the Pet Trainers Guild, as well as his part-time job as a spellmaster for spirit beasts. However, all this money added up was barely enough to cover his food expenses. On the other hand, he also had to buy his monthly electricity bill and his own physical strength supplies. In the pet trainer profession, unlike those sage-like cultivators who pursued the realm of not eating 5 grains, training a spirit beast consumed a lot of physical strength and energy. After Loopy Toad and Weiji added each other as friends on the chat app, Weiji swiftly sent Loopy Toad a group photo of the Pet Trainers Guild which he belonged to. In the photo, Weiji stood at the very front of the group. Weiji wasn't tall and had fair and clean looks, so Loopy Toad recognized him at a glance. But it didn't understand what on earth Weiji meant by this photo. "Do you see him?" Weiji asked. Loopy Toad nodded. I see you. Weiji. "Not me, it's the man in leather clothes and sunglasses in the middle of the first row." Loopy Toad followed Weiji's directions and found the person he was talking about. This person's attire was actually quite unique and modern, and he didn't look like a cultivator at all. In an era where everyone was a cultivator, it actually wasn't strange to see someone wearing ancient clothes on the street. But generally speaking, bigwigs like General E would wear military uniforms in public, and the rest of the time in their daily lives, they would also wear ancient attire. Of course, Loopy Toad felt that this might be a little ambiguous. After all, its little master Ling wore a school uniform. Loopy Toad stared at this man in skin. "Who is this?" Weiji sighed and said, "He's the crying old immortal I told you about, the vice president of our Pet Trainers Guild. You see, his head is already bald." Loopy Toad. It really isn't easy in our line of work. Too tiring. Although most pet trainers enjoy it, it's really physically and mentally exhausting. We're now in an era of peace, and there aren't many fights between cultivators. Compared with the consumption of our line of work, those delivery people seem a little too relaxed. Although every profession had its own difficulties, what Weiji said was not wrong. In the era of national cultivation, basic spells like the sword control technique had long been popularized. As long as one knew how to ride a sword, it was actually quite easy to do jobs like delivering packages and food deliveries. More importantly, the salary in this industry was actually very high. Weiji sighed and typed in a plaintive tone. "See? Our vice president, Crying Immortal, is here. It's because I signed too many contractual spiritual beasts when I was young that I couldn't keep up with my nutrition. I went bald." Loopy Toad. Weiji felt a wave of bitterness in his heart when he said that. He thought of the meme pack of Grandpa Ma Dongmei that was very popular on the internet. The old grandpa said with a smile, "Actually, I don't think pet trainers are under much pressure." The caption on the side of the meme pack was, "A certain 28-year-old professional pet trainer in Songhai City." To put it bluntly, a lot of baldness was actually related to pressure. Everyone had pressure. Take Loopy Toad for example. Apart from Little Master Ling, who was preparing for the midterm exams, the person under the most pressure was Father Wang. Web novelists couldn't stop updating for a day, and they also had to deal with trolls and anti-fans. Naturally, they were under a lot of pressure, even though the comprehensive quality of the readers is getting higher and higher. But there were still some special cases. For example, Father Wang's colleague, a teacher who wrote a historical novel, Yamashita Rising Water, had been cursed and urged to update by trolls because of a fire in his house. Loopy Toad felt that this was very uncultured behavior. Seriously, they weren't even as good as it, a dog. Over the years, Father Wang's update rate had increased, and his pressure had also increased. His hair would often fall out when he showered. The combination of pressure and age would cause the hairline to recede, and the top of his head to go bald. By the time he noticed this, forget Overlord shampoo. Even one-piece Haushika Hockey shampoo was already useless. Of course, perhaps Father Wang didn't need to worry about baldness. When it came to hair growth, he just had to touch it casually, and the grass would directly turn into a forest. This was much more convenient than a live streamer called Sun Yalong spending a huge sum of money on a hair transplant. When there was pressure, it was natural to release it. Because Loopy Toad had been cultivating the inheritance talisman recently, it was actually under a lot of internal mental pressure from the power of Sword Tao. Although Loopy Toad only dared to absorb a little at a time, it was very clear that if it wanted to smoothly inherit the power of Sword Tao of the 10-meter sword circle in the inheritance talisman that little Master Ling had given it, a proper balance between work and rest was very important. Thinking this, Loopy Toad directly typed a string of words to Wei Ji. "Bro, let's meet up later? Let's go out and relieve some stress." On the other side of the screen, Wei Ji's eyes suddenly lit up. It was July 15th on Saturday in the 12th week of the semester. Teacher Pan's Tao talismans and math classes had already been cancelled at school yesterday on Friday. Wang Ling felt that his grades for these two subjects were pretty good. He had already predicted the questions and had made ample preparations. It shouldn't be a problem to control the scores until they reached the class average. On Monday, it was Old Antiques Theory of History and Politics classes. The teachers of these two subjects especially liked to jump on the bandwagon. Wang Ling felt that the recent Immortal Mansion incident and the Demon Hunters Association incident would be discussed as topics, and would even come up with a series of topics. Even so, the scope was a little too wide. Who knew what kind of ideas the teachers of these two subjects would come up with? So Wang Ling felt that there was no point in thinking about it. He could only act according to the circumstances during the exams. He hadn't forgotten about signing a contract with Little Silver. In fact, when Little Silver had come all the way to deliver his blood the last time, Wang Ling had wanted to sign the contract. But after all, Little Silver had just given his blood back then, so Wang Ling hadn't been in a hurry. Whether it was a spirit beast or a holy beast, they had to be in a completely healthy state before signing a contract. This was because the process of signing a spirit beast, holy beast, contract would consume a lot of the spirit beast's own spirit energy. Wang Ling knew that Loopy Toad and Little Silver had added each other as friends online, and it seemed that they were chatting pretty well. Just as he was about to ask Loopy Toad about Little Silver, he turned his head and realized that Loopy Toad wasn't at home. Wang Ling looked up at the time. It was only 9:30 in the morning. Chapter 477. Because he had been busy with exams recently, Wang Ling had paid very little attention to other things. But now that he had finished 2 exams, he suddenly felt a lot less pressure. One exam was one less exam. Most kids at this age had the same idea as Wang Ling. Sometimes, before they had finished all their exams, and when there was only one left, they would start to unload all their burdens and get high at home. So now that Wang Ling had calmed down and thought about it carefully, he indeed felt that something wasn't quite right with Loopy Toad. Furthermore, the first time Wang Ling had felt that something was wrong was when Loopy Toad had watched Taoist Guang's live stream after it had finished cultivating in the small garden. At that time, Loopy Toad had directly given Taoist Guang a huge wave of flashing red gifts. Wang Ling estimated that all the gifts added up to at least 1,000 yuan. That was equivalent to his monthly allowance. First of all, Wang Ling felt that it was necessary to figure out where all this money had come from. Secondly, Wang Ling also realized that Loopy Toad had been particularly diligent in cultivating recently. If it had been a week ago, this guy would still have been sleeping in the garden before noon, when the sun was shining down on its head. Of course, narcolepsy might have played a part in this, but Wang Ling felt that it didn't make sense for Loopy Toad to change from a lazy character to a diligent one after bathing in the holy beast's blood, to alleviate some of the symptoms of narcolepsy. Was it because of his inheritance talisman? Wang Ling cupped his chin in front of his desk as he pondered. But the point was that the inheritance talisman didn't have the effect of making a lazy dog more diligent. Wang Ling had a vague feeling that Loopy Toad was hiding something from him. And it was something big. The point was that judging from Dog 2's current behavior, it probably wanted to solve it on its own. Although a good dog was one that didn't cause its owner any trouble, and could even relieve its owner's worries. Since they had already signed a spirit beast contract, Wang Ling felt that as Dog 2's owner, he should show some of the attitude that a master should have. If something big really happened, It wouldn't do for Loopy Toad to take it all on its own. But Loopy Toad didn't want to say anything, and Wang Ling couldn't force it to say anything. That would make him look overbearing and a little unreasonable. Although he was usually a little expressionless, he was actually very gentle. He wouldn't accept any rebuttals. The old man had been taking care of his flowers and plants. When it was almost 10 o'clock, he was ready to ride sheep out to buy a fish. The cooking duel between the old master and Jiang Haifu, the head of kitchen knife sect, had not ended yet. For this reason, the old master had been studying the recipe for the duel, preparing to invent a new fish dish. Since he wanted to study fish cuisine, he naturally had to buy fresh ingredients. If they were frozen in the fridge, the freshness of the ingredients would definitely be lost. As long as a gourmet chef put in the effort, everyone would be able to feel it. The first and second seasons of A Bite of China had such high ratings. So why was it being criticized and flamed in the third season? The audience were not fools. They could tell if the chef had put in a lot of effort or not. Usually, when the old man went out, he would take Loopy Toad out for a stroll or something. In the end, the old man realized that Loopy Toad wasn't at home when he went out these 2 days. Why are you always going out recently? The old man scratched his head, a little puzzled. He didn't remember his dog being like this before. Hearing this, Mother Wang couldn't help laughing. Dad, Loopy Toad isn't an ordinary dog. It also has to cultivate. You can't treat it like a normal house pet. Right, this is a spirit dog. I almost forgot. The old man patted his head. But I heard that spirit beasts actually eat a lot. In the end, our dog really saves money. Mother Wang nodded. There are a lot of students at Ling Ling's school who are concerned about him. Classmate Gua's family runs a spirit beast shop, and they send custom-made dog food over every week. That's why this dog food is different from the ones sold outside. Speaking up to this point, the old man specially reminded Mother Wang that she had to give Dopey Gua a clear accounting of the money later. The old man felt that it was a good intention, but it really wasn't right to take it for free. Even if the other party didn't want it, he still had to give them some. Don't worry, Dad. The last time I gave them money, the shop assistant in classmate Gua's house refused to take it. From now on, I'll go to their shop once a week to buy some dog food and cat food, and send it to the stray house. The stray house that Mother Wang was talking about was actually a charity project of the Pet Trainers Guild. It took in a lot of homeless spirit beasts, most of which were stray cats and dogs. After all, Mother Wang had lived for so many years, and was quite adept at dealing with the ways of the world. Dopey Gua refused to take the money, but Mother Wang went to their shop every week, and anyone with a discerning eye could tell what she was thinking. As time went by, the shop assistants who distributed the goods became familiar with Mother Wang, and felt that she was very understanding. This directly represented the Wang family's image. Beautifully done, Dongmei. The old man couldn't help praising her. Actually, this wasn't deliberate. Goodwill could be passed on. Dopey Gua had his own kind heart, and all Mother Wang did was pass on this goodwill. Upstairs, Wang Ling quietly listened to the conversation between Mother Wang and the old man, and his heart warmed. It was said that behind a powerful man, there was an even more powerful woman. Wang Ling felt that no matter how high his realm was, or how extraordinary his strength was, it didn't matter. It wasn't him who was supporting the family now, but Father Wang. Thus, in Wang Ling's heart, Father Wang's image as a father would always be very lofty. As the woman behind a powerful man, Wang Ling's imagination had elevated Mother Wang's image to new heights. Although Mother Wang herself might not realize it, she had indeed used her unfinished novel to groom old antique and Taoist Tao Tai, this pair of epic killers at peak itinerant immortal level. So even if Mother Wang was just a housewife, she was still a very strong housewife. Never look down on a housewife, because you never knew what a housewife did when she wasn't doing housework. While Wang Ling was sighing with emotion in his heart, he heard the old man say, "But it's not good for our dog to run around all day. I had a colleague who also had a little thing at home, but it was a cat. After a while she brought back a whole litter." Mother Wang was blank, and covered her mouth in astonishment. Loopy Toad probably wouldn't do such a thing. That's hard to say. Sometimes, when feelings arise, it can set its sights on a gorgeously dressed little female dog. So my suggestion is in for a penny, in for a pound. Saying this, the old man made a scissors gesture. Directly ligate it. Wang Ling. In that instant, it was as if the hearts of Wang Ling and his mother were connected. This song was dedicated to Loopy Toad. Come back quickly. Chapter 478. Of course, the old man was just casually mentioning the sterilization. After all, spiritual beasts had spiritual intelligence, and were no longer what they used to be. As a spiritual beast with intelligence, it would naturally suppress its emotions. Otherwise, it would be no different from a toy poodle. The main thing was that Loopy Toad had been leaving early and coming back late these last few days, which worried the old man a little. On one hand, the old man actually knew that Loopy Toad had been involved in the recent incident with the Demon Hunters Association. Now that the head of the Demon Hunters Association hadn't been caught, what if someone took revenge on Loopy Toad when it went out? On the other hand, in today's society, there were many careless friends. Who knew whether his pure and innocent buttface would be led astray by some scoundrels? Wang Ling realized that Father Wang's talent for writing novels really might have been inherited from the old man. The older a person got, the bigger the hole in their imagination, and the easier it was for them to let their imagination run wild. Even if he was choosing a daughter-in-law for himself, the old man still chose numinous mother with numinous axe for Father Wang. Dad, do what you need to do. I'll get Ling Ling to look for him later, it'll be fine. Seeing the old man's worried expression, Mother Wang comforted him. After watching sheep take the old man out to sell fish, she turned around and went upstairs to look for Wang Ling. Wang Ling immediately knew that this operation to find Loopy Toad was unavoidable. But fortunately, he had already finished 2 exams. Apart from the essay section, he felt that he already had victory in his theory of history and politics classes next Monday. On this Saturday, he had plenty of time to deal with Buttface. It was actually very easy to find Loopy Toad. One just needed to use the Spirit Beast contract to easily pinpoint its general location. But Wang Ling felt that finding Loopy Toad wasn't the key right now. What on earth was it hiding from him? A lazy dog had suddenly become diligent in cultivation, leaving early in the morning and returning late at night. The most terrifying thing was that he had learned to hide his own money. If it wasn't for the fact that he knew that his dog wasn't an indiscreet dog, Wang Ling would really have thought that his dog was keeping a little female dog outside. Wang Ling sighed. Actually, even if Mother Wang and the old man hadn't said anything, he would have taken the initiative to show some concern. But first, he had to know what secret Loopy Toad was hiding. Loopy Toad went out that morning. Because the Wang family's small villa was in a remote location, Loopy Toad had to catch the first spirit bus in the morning, according to the time it had agreed on with Wei Ji. There were a lot of people on the suburban spirit buses, and they had taken in a lot of passengers along the way. If it had been a hearse in the city, it would have been pushed to the bottom by now. Of all the modes of transportation, except for the subway, none of the other modes of transportation had space expansion technology. For Loopy Toad, taking a spirit bus was a relatively more convenient option. Getting on the bus was the same as before. It would first sneak into the bus at high speed, then find a place to hide, and leave a few coins under the seat when it got out. From the Wang family's villa to Wei Ji's apartment, if one were to travel on a sword, it would only take 15 minutes. However, the hearse was still a step too slow. It took Loopy Toad a full hour and a half to reach the apartment where Wei Ji lived. It was almost the same time as Loopy Toad had predicted. If Wang Ling had left the house half an hour later, he would have been late. When they arrived at the family apartment building, Loopy Toad burrowed into a bush and sent Wei Ji its location, indicating that it had arrived and asking him to come down and pick it up. Why did it burrow into a haystack? If anyone saw a green Akita that knew how to use its own phone to chat, it would probably be on social news again. So Loopy Toad was still on guard. At the same time, Loopy Toad also noticed that the security guard at the entrance to the family apartment building seemed to have been replaced, and the main entrance was tightly shut. Without an access card, you weren't allowed in at all unless an acquaintance came down to pick you up. After that group of bone dragon men from the Demon Hunters Association had bribed the security guards with a few packs of cigarettes to break into the family apartment building, it was clear that this matter had been taken very seriously. The security guards at the family apartment building were now very new, and they looked as strict as the mighty miracle god guarding the door. After sending the message, Loopy Toad jumped out of the bush and waited at the entrance for Wei Ji to come down to pick him up as promised. When several security guards in the security booth saw a green-furred dog appear at the apartment building entrance, their eyes instantly felt a lot more refreshed. A pair of security guards on duty chatted in the security booth as they stared at Loopy Toad. "This dog's fur color is so strange." "It's fine, at least it protects its eyes." "Look, it's staring at us." "Whose dog is this? Why don't we let it in?" "At first glance, it looks a little cute." "Don't cause trouble. If it really is from the apartment, the owner will definitely come down to pick it up." Our last batch of security guards was fired because one of them let someone in at random, and even the old captain was implicated. At this point, the security guard who had said he would let Loopy Toad in instantly fell silent. To be honest, the family apartment building wasn't an ordinary place, and they were treated very well here. Furthermore, even the security guards were veterans who had retired from the army, so they were actually very professional. As for the last time when they had let someone from the Demon Hunters Association in for a pack of cigarettes, that had been purely a mistake on the job. Supposedly, the brother who had let them in at noon that day had been a little depressed because he had been jilted. So he had drunk some alcohol and had gotten hot-headed for a moment. But no one had expected the matter to blow up so much. With Director Zhang's involvement in this matter, no one dared to say a word. In fact, in many people's eyes, being fired was already a very light punishment. Director Zhang's identity in the family apartment building, where Wei Ji lived, actually wasn't a secret. This was Marshal Jiang, who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Blade Master General Yi. Back then, he had killed a demon king with one punch, and a demon god with 2 punches. So forget about being fired. It would only take one word for him to investigate the background, remove all that this brother had in the army, and wipe out his honor. At this thought, the 2 security guards were sighing in their hearts when they happened to see a figure appear behind Loopy Toad. Feeling a shadow looming over it, Loopy Toad subconsciously turned its head and saw an old man in a white vest and bell-bottomed pants, with a bunch of keys hanging from his waist standing behind it. He was dressed exactly the same as before. Loopy Toad was blank. Wasn't this the old man who read the water meter? It still remembered Wei Ji's introduction of this old man's background. This was the landlord of the family apartment building, and one of the 10 founding generals, Battle Saint Jiang Lei. It was clear that the moment he saw Loopy Toad, Marshal Jiang couldn't help raising his eyebrows. He stared at Loopy Toad with a thoughtful expression. "I remember you're from that Ji family?" "Wei Ji." Loopy Toad couldn't help reminding him. "Wei what Ji?" "Wei Ji. What Wei what Ji?" Chapter 479. Loopy Toad's face was very indifferent as it looked at Marshal Jiang in front of it with indifferent eyes. It had to be said that Marshal Jiang's acting was actually a little realistic. If Loopy Toad hadn't known that this Battle Saint's cultivation was so high that he wouldn't be reduced to dementia, it would have almost believed him. "You can tell I'm teasing you?" Marshal Jiang was amused as he crouched down to rub Loopy Toad's head. Loopy Toad vigilantly avoided him, but in the end found that it was as if there was a suction force in Marshal Jiang's palm, causing its head to involuntarily move toward Marshal Jiang's palm. Bloody hell! A sucking palm? Loopy Toad was alarmed. It knew that this old man was most likely testing it again, but it couldn't avoid it at all. After all, this was one of the 10 founding generals, and a battle saint who had punched a demon god back then. Loopy Toad had no way of resisting this kind of person. At that moment, Loopy Toad actually felt a little regretful. If it had known earlier, it would have asked Wei Ji to meet somewhere else instead of coming here. This casually dressed old man gave Loopy Toad a very dangerous feeling. The moment he sucked Loopy Toad's head into his palm, Marshal Jiang couldn't help sighing in his heart. This dog's level had risen again since the last time he saw it. But how long had it been? It's only been less than a week. And it had actually gone from third class to second class? Marshal Jiang let go of Loopy Toad's head and couldn't help rubbing its ear as he said telepathically, "If possible, you can invite your master here next time for tea. If he doesn't have time, then forget it." Loopy Toad abruptly raised its head a little stunned. "Don't be nervous. I can roughly guess your identity, but I won't do anything to you." Marshal Jiang smiled as he looked at Loopy Toad. "I don't know how many demon kings and demon gods have died at this old man's hands. Later on, whenever this old man went into battle, those demon kings and demon gods would be so scared that they would break out in a sweat, and some of them would even collapse on the spot. This is because the aura of a martial sage on my body has a natural deterrent effect on demonic chi. But you don't have any demon chi on you. This proves that you're already on the right path of using spirit energy. Since your master was able to wash away your demon nature, he indeed has some ability." Loopy Toad instantly didn't dare say anything. "Of course, this old man is just curious, Loopy Toad. He's very busy." This was the truth. Their young master was indeed very busy. He was busy with his midterm exams. Loopy Toad was well aware that in front of a person of this level, its lies would be seen through at a glance. Since it had already been exposed to this extent, Loopy Toad could only try its best to maneuver around. Unexpectedly, Marshal Jiang looked indifferent. He shrugged and stood up. The two security guards in the security booth saw Marshal Jiang talking and laughing with a dog at the entrance of the apartment. They couldn't help but open the window and greet. "Uncle Jiang, you're back?" "Yeah, I just went out for coffee with old E. General E is also in Shanghai City." The security guard was blank. "Heh, he is different from me. I will retire when I say so. He's so bored all day that he wants to find something to do." Loopy Toad listened quietly on the side. It had a rough idea that General E was here because of Evil Sword God, and probably wouldn't be back for a while. As he chatted with the security guard, Loopy Toad watched as the old man skillfully took out an access card from his pocket and put it in the sensor area of the iron gate. The iron gate immediately gave off a crisp beep-beep sound, and then it opened with a click. He walked in first, then stretched out his hand to hold the iron gate open as he looked at Loopy Toad. "What are you waiting for? Come in." Seeing this scene, the two security guards couldn't help trembling, and their foreheads instantly broke out in sweat. Marshal Jiang personally opened the door. This dog had too much face. "Uncle Jiang, do you know this dog?" One of the security guards asked weakly as he wiped at his sweat. "It's a friend of Wei Ji's. He's here to see Wei Ji," said Marshal Jiang. Realization dawned on the two security guards. It probably doesn't come here often, right? Who knows? It's normal for friends to visit each other. Marshal Jiang looked at Loopy Toad, then stretched out a finger to point at it as he stared at the two security guards. "Both of you, write this down and tell the other brothers later. From now on, this dog will be the only one at the door of this family apartment. You can let it in." Loopy Toad's gaze followed Marshal Jiang's finger, and it also felt overwhelmed by the favor. "Ah." The two security guards were stupefied, shocked. Battle St. Jianglei's first privilege was actually for a green-furred dog. Marshal Jiang glanced at the two of them. "You two, my ass. If anyone else forgets to bring their access card, the same rules apply. Lock the door and wait for me to open it, or get someone else familiar with the apartment to open it for you. Do you understand?" "Oh, all right." Loopy Toad saw that the two security guards were completely stupefied. His tone sounded a little like an order, but Loopy Toad felt that it was more like a casual greeting from an old man in the neighborhood committee. After saying this, Marshal Jiang didn't linger here for long, and was about to turn around and walk toward the office of the apartment's residence committee. Before he left, Marshal Jiang thought about it carefully, and in the end, he couldn't help turning around and giving the two security guards some advice. He explained to them that he wasn't opening a back door. This was in response to the country's recent crackdown on the illegal sale of spirit beasts and its call for animal protection. What F *** King Animal Protection? Not long after Marshal Jiang left, Wei Ji appeared. Brother Dog. Wei Ji had just stepped out of the building when he saw the green figure next to the security office, and he waved in greeting from a distance. Wei Ji had also come to pick up Loopy Toad with the pushing large butterfly. It couldn't speak, and perched motionlessly on Wei Ji's shoulder. It only flapped its wings when it saw Loopy Toad. Loopy Toad dashed over, and when it reached Wei Ji, the latter pulled it aside. It noticed that Wei Ji was smiling like a lotus flower. Brother Dog, you're so awesome. Uncle Jiang personally opened the privilege for you. If outsiders found out about this, I don't know about it outside the apartment, but in this apartment, they would definitely brag about it for the rest of their lives. Loopy Toad was a little baffled. How did you know? Wei Ji. Uncle Jiang told me. He knew when I went downstairs, and he sent me a telepathic message. In the apartment, whenever Uncle Jiang wants to notify someone, he basically doesn't use the phone, and can directly send a telepathic message. Loopy Toad sweated. It realized that sometimes having a high realm was indeed very convenient. Let's go upstairs first. Wei Ji touched the elevator button and looked at Loopy Toad. I've been thinking about giving you a gift. I happen to have something on hand recently, and I think you'll like it a lot. Loopy Toad was blank when it heard this. He wanted to give it a gift. What gift? A fly. Chapter 480. Loopy Toad had initially planned to meet Wei Ji somewhere else, because it had always been afraid of that Marshal Jiang in the apartment. But judging from the old man's attitude toward it just now, Loopy Toad hadn't sensed any malice. Back then, Battle Saint Jiang Lei, who was a demon king and a demon god, had been famous for his might, and who knew how many people had died at his hands like fried chicken chops. If the other party really had malice toward it, Loopy Toad felt that it should be able to sense it. Judging from Marshal Jiang's current attitude toward it, Loopy Toad felt that perhaps the other party really was just curious about it. Even so, Loopy Toad had to handle this matter cautiously. After all, Marshal Jiang had already taken a liking to little Master Ling. No matter what, Loopy Toad felt that it couldn't drag its master into this. In the elevator, Loopy Toad's expression was a little grave as it stared at Wei Ji, who was looking at it with a slanted smile. From Loopy Toad's angle, this expression looked a little wretched, and all its green fur couldn't help but tremble. You've already thought about it? Loopy Toad stared at Wei Ji and asked. To be honest, this was a little sudden. Loopy Toad actually hadn't expected Wei Ji to prepare a gift for it. Although he and Wei Ji had a pleasant conversation, they had only known each other for less than a week. Loopy Toad counted with its claws, including today. It was exactly 7 days. No, I just happened to receive this item. It's useless to me, but it should be quite suitable for you. Out of habit, Wei Ji tugged at his hat and grinned. Besides, today is a good day. It's also our anniversary. What Memorial Day? Loopy Toad was blank. Let's join hands to take down the Demon Hunters Association's 7-day anniversary. It's also the 7th day since the Demon Hunters Association collapsed. Wei Ji said agitatedly. Loopy Toad. At this time, the elevator had arrived. Wei Ji seemed to be in a particularly good mood today. As he walked out of the elevator, he sang. Last night's dream is over again. The end of the commercial stage adds new clothes. The old song starts again. Loopy Toad suddenly realized that Wei Ji's singing was actually pretty good. His breath and rhythm were there. The lyrics in the first half of the song were still normal, but when it came to the chorus in the second half, the style suddenly changed. That day you and I agreed to be undercover in the Demon Hunters Association. Do you still remember? Today is the 7th day of the Demon Hunters Association. Loopy Toad. What the F ***K? Wei Ji's gift seemed to have been prepared in advance. The entire 23rd floor was Wei Ji's home. In order to transform the ecological environment for the pushing large butterfly, Wei Ji had spent a lot of money to transform the living room. However, there were still a lot of empty rooms left. It wasn't that Wei Ji didn't want to renovate them, but that he was really short of money during this period of time. The gift for Loopy Toad was in one of the empty rooms, and Weiji brought it to the room. Then, he removed the black cloth that was covering the gifts in the room. Dang 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 dang. Loopy Toad. Then, Loopy Toad saw a square glass jar. And inside the jar was a large bone about the thickness of an adult man's arm, and more than 178 meters long. The joints of the bones were uneven. From the looks of it, it was a broken bone, the kind that had been broken by a huge force. Sure enough, he was going to deliver his own bones. Loopy Toad felt that this was completely within reason, and wasn't surprised at all. In a situation where Weiji didn't know his true identity, it would be strange if he sent him a fly. How is it, brother dog? Do you like it? Weiji smiled as he looked at Loopy Toad. For some reason, he felt that this dog's reaction to bones was a little cold, but Weiji didn't give it any advice at all, because this just showed how unusual Loopy Toad was. When a normal spirit dog saw such a large bone, its eyes would definitely have already been sucked in, and it wouldn't have been able to move. The gift isn't bad. Loopy Toad had actually already expected this gift, so it wasn't too pleasantly surprised. But in the end, this was Weiji's kind intentions. Thus, in a short moment, Loopy Toad quickly reviewed the 300 poems and idioms it had memorized when learning Chinese characters in its mind. For a moment, it suddenly realized that it was actually at a loss for words. If it had known earlier, it would have looked for a few spirit dogs to experiment on, and see how they reacted when they received the bones. Now that it was a dog, Loopy Toad felt that it should put its heart and soul into this role. Even if it didn't like bones, it should at least act like one. It felt that Weiji would be very disappointed to see its current reaction. Loopy Toad sighed in its heart, and walked over to the glass jar. But then again, it felt that this bone was a little too big, and it looked like the bone of some gigantic spirit beast. Loopy Toad wanted to get a little closer to take a closer look, but in the end, it suddenly smelled blood on the bone. The smell of blood was very faint, and Loopy Toad wouldn't have been able to smell it at all if it wasn't up close. It could only smell it when it was right next to the jar. And Loopy Toad was very familiar with the smell of blood on the bone. This was the blood of a holy beast? Loopy Toad was taken aback. It never thought that this would actually be the bone of a holy beast. Judging from the smell of blood on the bone, Loopy Toad thought that this bone actually wasn't very old, and was probably around 200 years old. 200 years was more or less enough for the smell of blood to evaporate to this extent. But for a holy beast with a long lifespan, a mere 200 years was nothing more than a snap of the fingers. Furthermore, from the bone's glossy appearance, it was clear that it had been carefully cleaned by someone. A holy beast bone that actually wasn't that old, apart from Little Silver. Were there really any other holy beasts alive in this world? Loopy Toad started to ponder. Seeing that Loopy Toad was lost in thought, Weiji didn't disturb it. He felt that this brother dog was really a little amazing. A normal dog would have already given up when it saw this kind of bone, but brother dog actually looked like it was thinking about its dog life. Weiji felt that this was the gap between Loopy Toad and other dogs. While those dogs were still obsessed with the bone, and itching to pounce on it, and take a few bites, brother dog was actually able to remain reserved and thoughtful. This was too rare. Weiji felt that Loopy Toad's spiritual intelligence had already developed to a very high level, and might even have surpassed those rumored first-class spirit beasts who had already taken human form. Where did you get this bone? After a moment, Loopy Toad tried hard to suppress its astonishment as it turned to ask Weiji. Cupping his chin, Weiji thought for a moment before he explained. This is actually a collection of our Pet Trainers Guild's vice president. I think he picked it up when he was traveling back then. Apart from some cracks in the joints, the bone is actually very beautiful, like a crystal. Our vice president was curious, so he kept it. Until recently, when he played Fight the Landlord with me and lost to me. Loopy Toad was stunned. What kind of operation was this? Weiji. Oh, that's right, this bone actually has a name. The vice president named it Bone King. Chapter 481. Loopy Toad stared at the holy beast bone for a long time. and couldn't help secretly swallowing at the lingering smell of holy beast blood on it. However, it really wasn't interested in the bone. It was because the lingering smell of holy beast blood on it was too fragrant. Holy beast blood had a special smell that even spirit beasts with poor senses of smell could smell. At first, it didn't feel anything, but it would soon become addicted. Loopy Toad didn't know if it was because it had been soaked in Little Silver's holy blood, but it always felt like it was a little more sensitive. "You really want to give it to me?" Loopy Toad looked at Wei Ji. It was very obvious that neither crying old immortal nor Wei Ji, the vice president of the Pet Trainers Guild, could tell the origin of this bone. Otherwise they definitely wouldn't have given it away as an ordinary beast bone. The main reason was that the holy beast blood on the bone had evaporated too thoroughly. Loopy Toad felt that if its cultivation hadn't increased recently, it probably wouldn't have been able to smell it. Its face was almost pressed against the glass tank. It had to be this close to be able to smell it. "It's just a bone." Wei Ji spread his hands indifferently. "Besides, I won it anyway, so I didn't lose anything." But the vice president felt sorry for it for a long time. "Why? There's a Fenrir at the vice president's house that howls every night. But as long as the vice president throws it this bone, it'll calm down. I heard that the Fenrir licks this bone like it's a real cicada." Wei Ji pursed his lips and laughed. "I reckon that the vice president will have to rely on sleeping pills for this Fenrir to get by. It's that serious." That Fenrir is like this when it's in heat." Loopy Toad suddenly felt that it wasn't kind of nice to just accept the bone so openly. "Then should I give it back to him?" Although it said that, Loopy Toad still opened its mouth and used the Toad Clan's space swallowing spell to suck the entire bone in. "Wei Ji, brother dog, you really do have something." Loopy Toad was very familiar with this action. Almost every human cultivator had done it when they were little when they received red envelopes during the new year, saying that it wasn't good to accept red envelopes while stuffing them into their pockets. It was a classic case of saying no, but its body being very honest. Putting the Bone King in its mouth, Loopy Toad had already decided to look for Little Silver later to study this bone's origin. At most, it could only determine that it was a holy beast bone based on its blood. At most, it could tell that this was a holy beast bone from the blood. But there was one thing that Loopy Toad was very concerned about. It looked at Wei Ji and asked, "I remember that Fenrir isn't from our country, right?" "They're spirit beasts from Western Europe, but we call them spirit beasts here, while they're used to calling them magical beasts over there." As a professional pet trainer, Wei Ji actually knew this type of culture very well. On one hand, it was because the scent on the bone was too faint, and on the other hand, Loopy Toad hadn't expected it. The announcement of the extinction of holy beasts had actually been posted a long time ago, dating back to 1,000 years ago at the earliest. After so many years, weeping old immortal himself probably hadn't expected that the bone he had picked up on his travels would actually be the bone of a holy beast. After hearing Wei Ji explain that the concept of spirit beast was different in China and abroad, Loopy Toad felt that it needed to learn a little about foreign history and culture. Loopy Toad's knowledge of foreign history and culture was too limited. The most important thing was that it didn't even fully understand what it was like in China. Huaxiao Nation had been founded for nearly 5,000 years, and if rounded up, that was 100 million. Huaxiao was a country with a long history of culture, a galaxy of talents, a land of etiquette, and a united people. When the gate between worlds had first invaded back then, the united Huaxiao cultivators had actually taught those invading demon kings and demon gods a harsh lesson. There were too many things to learn. Thinking this, Loopy Toad pondered for a moment before asking, "By the way, do foreign countries have the concept of holy beasts?" Wei Ji nodded. "Yes, but they're still called different things. Foreigners call holy beasts soul beasts, but it seems that there are still a few of them alive and well, while ours are completely gone." Loopy Toad sighed. Because of a rumor back then, holy beasts actually suffered such a calamity. How pitiful. Then what class is that Fenrir from the vice president's house? The only thing Loopy Toad remembered was that whether it was at home or abroad, the standard for identifying spirit beasts, devil beasts, was actually the same. It's an 8th class seedling, and it's only 300 years old. But femur has a very long lifespan. If it's nurtured well, it can grow to 1st class at most. Only 8th class. Loopy Toad instantly heaved a huge sigh of relief. Fortunately, it was only 8th class. Although it was already 300 years old, there was a limit to the intelligence of an 8th class spirit beast. Considering its age, that 8th class femur actually only had the IQ of a 2 or 3-year-old human. At this stage, forget the holy beast bone. Even if Loopy Toad pulled Little Silver in front of this guy, femur might not be able to recognize it as a genuine holy beast. Now that this Bone King had fallen into Loopy Toad's hands, this femur would definitely have a problem with it. Loopy Toad had actually been a little worried that this femur would tell crying old immortal about how precious this bone was. But now, this concern was completely dispelled. In crying old immortal's eyes, this immature femur was probably more like a child whose toy had been taken away. Loopy Toad couldn't help teasing him. By the way, these foreign devil beasts really mature early. They're only 300 years old, and they're already in heat? TSK, you haven't seen it. Weiji gestured with his hands. Even a 300-year-old femur is as big as 2 adult spirit lions. Loopy Toad, so big. Weiji nodded. A fully grown femur can grow to the size of a villa at most. But an adult femur can learn to control its size on its own, and it's very loyal. The most difficult stage to deal with is when it's in heat. Speaking up to this point, Weiji couldn't help sking. Brother dog, you haven't seen it. When I went to the vice president's house last time, I was so shocked by the thing down there. It's too big. I'm so envious. Loopy Toad. Weiji couldn't stop sighing. In order to deal with femur's heat, the vice president actually had a lot of female femur dolls custom made, but they were all broken by it. Loopy Toad was silent for a moment before it said, "You can send me one later." Weiji laughed loudly. Brother dog, it's not that I'm looking down on you, but that doll was custom made for femur by the dean. You definitely won't feel comfortable using it. Don't you know there's no truth in this? Loopy Toad, you misunderstand. I just want to ask a friend of mine to reinforce it, so that it'll never break in the future. Actually, the method Loopy Toad was talking about was for little Master Ling to enchant it. He didn't need any extra attributes, and just needed to increase the doll's durability and toughness to the max. Loopy Toad felt that this was the only thing it could do for that poor femur. It understood that a doll that would never break in exchange for a Bone King wasn't a loss at all. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.